Lord of Mystery. The Return of the Stars Chapter 321 to 340. Chapter 321. Should a monocle be worn on the left or right eye? After leaving Backland, where are you going next? Of course I want to find a way to separate. I don't want to stay with you two bastards all the time. Even the air I breathe is filthy. Join me in secretly returning to the Rose of Redemption, joining the Serpent, and becoming an angel where the Lord sits. This is the right path for us to take. Get out of this body with your disgusting beliefs. Haha, do you really think I want to stay with you two guys who are neither men nor women? You can choose to commit suicide, and we will never stop you. I haven't found out whether you two are a boy or a girl. I'm not willing to leave this world like this. Shut your stinky mouth, and staying with you is 10,000 times more disgusting than being soaked in a stinking ditch. Under the crimson moonlight, three completely different voices came from a body that looked relatively young, as if they were talking to themselves or in opposition to each other. Everyone, please be quiet. We should discuss the next thing. This weak body can't sustain it for long. You can first find a suitable caretaker as a temporary residence. In Backland, weren't the Believers of the Night the most suitable candidates? It's a pity that you two useless guys have backed down. Hey, Medici, you only have this powerful mouth. Backland is always being watched by the Dark Knight. Do you dare to directly deal with his followers? At least I will give it a try. Even if the night comes, as long as I pray to the Lord, I believe that the big snake will come to join us soon. Then I would rather be imprisoned by the night. Tisk, after so many years of knowing each other, I never knew you had a hobby of being imprisoned. Stop arguing, aren't you tired of arguing after so many years? You're so useless if you haven't gotten used to this kind of relationship after all these years. Indeed, you should temper your character. It would be great to be as casual and peaceful as I am, without being anxious at all. Faced with the sudden joint attack between Medici and Einhorn, Sauron stopped speaking. After a brief silence, Medici chuckled and said, "Someone is opening the things I left behind. Do you want to go and take a look?" Haha, the things you left behind are as stinky as you. I don't want to get close to them at all. It's better to go to the southern continent first, where the atmosphere of war is the strongest. Where is this? South Wales. This body is really troublesome, and I still have to buy a ticket to take the boat. After another discussion, the young man rushed towards Punning Port. On the desk, 008, who was locked in the pen box, began to beat, and the pen box made a slight shaking sound. This made Hasta have to pay attention, then opened the pen box and released 008. "Master, I feel the breath of war is approaching." 008 quickly wrote on the blank paper. It came so quickly. Hasta murmured, it had only been 3 days since his last conversation with 008, and Soren Einhorn Medici had already arrived at Punning Port. With its particularity, you should find that there is an unusual atmosphere in this port. Although the monk in yellow is good at concealing his aura, he can still be sensed to some extent in front of the trinity of red priests. Fortunately, I had made some preparations in advance, and Mrs. Lisa completely concealed her whereabouts. According to her own words, in terms of hiding destiny, unless it is a sequence one of the destiny path or a true god, it will not be easily seen through. Meow. Azishara jumped to the window sill and lay down, her eyes far deeper than usual. "Master. He is here." While Hasta was still thinking, 008 suddenly wrote a string of words, then flew to Hasta's hand, lightly touched his finger, and motioned for him to hold her. Hasta gently held 008, his eyes slightly focused, looking at the figure that suddenly appeared on the sofa. He didn't know that young man, but the aura hidden in that man was very scary. Soren Einhorn Medici came to the door so quickly. Is it because of 008? In their opinion, there is no danger at all in a small place like Punning Port. It's strange that the pen of Alzuhad would appear in such a small place. I thought I had made a mistake. The young man spoke words that were inappropriate for his age. Sure enough, it was attracted by 008. It was probably because Sauron Einhorn Medici noticed the relevant aura when 008 reminded him to pay attention just now that they suddenly appeared here. Hasta understood in his heart, his expression was calm, and he was not panicked at all. Instead, he gently turned the 008 in his hand a few times between his fingers. "You seem to have guessed that we were coming. Was it because this pen tipped you off?" Seeing Hasta's calm expression, Soren Einhorn Medici couldn't help but become a little more serious. Hasta said calmly, The right pen should naturally be in the hands of the right person. Haha, if Adam hears these words, I don't know what kind of expression he will have. I am inexplicably looking forward to it. The person who said this now should be Medici. Only he has the confidence to comment on Adam at will. Asta glanced at Medici, and a smile slightly appeared on the corner of his mouth. I'm looking forward to what his expression will be like. After all, will such a paranoid person be moved by other things? As soon as these words came out, the young man Soren Einhorn Medici, who was sitting on the sofa opposite, changed his expression slightly, and his eyes became stern in an instant. Not everyone would call Adam paranoid. Under their gaze, Asta slowly opened the newly bought glasses case on the table and took out a crystal monocle from it. Soren Einhorn Medici exuded a dangerous aura all over his body. Wait a moment, it's a little dirty. Asta slowly wiped the monocle with a glasses cloth, and then put it on his left eye. The solemnity in Soren Einhorn Medici's eyes faded a lot, and the corners of his mouth raised slightly, as if he was sneering and mocking something. Asta smiled at them, and slowly put the monocle on his right eye again. Where were we just talking about? The mockery on Soren Einhorn Medici's lips froze, and his eyes changed several times. Finally, he looked at Hasta with suspicion. You are not him. After so many years, Medici, your suspicion is still as serious as ever. Swish, Soren Einhorn Medici stood up from the sofa at once, his eyes full of shock. Especially Medici, he never thought that he would meet Aemon here. Thinking about it carefully, with Amon's personality, he might indeed take away the pen of Asulehad and deliberately create some trouble for Adam. Hasta just smiled at Soren Einhorn Medici, who stood up, and then took off the monocle on his right eye. Asta sighed slightly and said, I'm not used to wearing this thing. Especially when I look at people, I always easily mistake them for other people. Sauron Einhorn Medici's face changed again, and finally he sat on the sofa again, saying in a cold tone, no one dares to joke with me like this in person. Everything has a first time, and you will get used to it after encountering it a few more times in the future. Ha ha ha, Medici, you will be fooled one day. Shut up. You are so angry, ha ha ha. Medici, you have been successfully provoked by a young man. This taste should be very good, right? Did you two succeed in distinguishing them just now? We are not as familiar with you and Aemon. The triumphant laughter was mixed with angry scolding. As the three of them quarreled, a face grew on each side of the young man's cheek. Suddenly, the desk in front of Asta suddenly exploded. The three of Soren Einhorn Medici, who were suspected of being in an internal conflict, suddenly had a unified idea and wanted to wipe out Asta, who was sitting behind the desk. Unfortunately, their attack was somehow drawn to the desk. Asta, who was sitting behind the desk, was not injured at all. I have been on guard against you old bastards for a long time. Asta sneered. Since he dared to use Aemon to play a trick on Soren Einhorn Medici, he naturally made certain preparations. The current Soren Einhorn Medici is just an evil spirit with empty status but seriously insufficient strength. He was able to scare away even Adam at the beginning. After 3 days of preparation, he was naturally not afraid of Soren Einhorn Medici's sudden attack. This is just a joke of reciprocity. I hope you don't mind. After the attack, Soren Einhorn Medici suddenly calmed down with a warm smile on his face. Tisk, it's clear that he is afraid that if he continues to fight, he will expose his true situation at the moment. So when the attack failed, he deliberately said it was a joke of courtesy. If it was just a joke, I wouldn't care. Asta smiled, then looked at the desk that had been broken into powder, and said in a slightly cold voice, but if something is destroyed, we have to talk about compensation. Blackmail, this is a reasonable request. After all, you broke into my house for no reason and broke my desk. What if you don't compensate? Then you are naturally a bad guest. Soren Einhorn Medici smiled, leaned back slightly, leaned on the sofa, and raised his arrogant and confident long legs. Chapter 322 I raised a cat and a bird. This casual and arrogant self-confidence reminded Hasta of the djinn. When he first came to the Hall of Stars for a meeting, he was so carefree and casual, putting his 2 long legs on the table. I really didn't come here with any good intentions. At first I just thought the atmosphere here was weird. I didn't expect that the people here are also weird both inside and outside. The frivolous tone sounded like Medici speaking. Hasta just smiled and said, Since you're here to visit, don't you need to prepare a gift in advance? Tisk. I'm not in the habit of preparing gifts for people. Sauron Einhorn Medici shook his head and said with the face on his left cheek. Which old friend are you? Friends? Isn't the word friend too luxurious for you? Asta's tone was undisguised sarcasm. We have a lot of enemies, but if they were really here, they would never talk so much nonsense. The person speaking was the face on the right cheek. It depends on how you want to resolve this matter today. Hastur brought the topic back again. This fine desk was worth 100 gold pounds. They had to pay at least a small price to get over it. What do you want from us? Hey, do you have anything valuable on you? Hastur's slightly raised eyebrows made Sauron Einhorn Medici sneer. Sheep always want to disguise themselves as lions to scare predators. Sheep or lion, do you want to try again? There was no panic in Asta's eyes, and he was so confident that Sauron Einhorn Medici could not make up his mind. They who are on the hunter path are inherently suspicious and will not easily attack their prey when they are not sure. You want this card of blasphemy? There was a red priest card floating on the fingertips of Sauron Einhorn Medici's right hand. Rissel on this card of blasphemy is standing on top of a chariot wearing black and red armor, holding a shield in one hand and a spear in the other, looking towards the fierce fighting battlefield ahead. I have to say that Russell on this red priest card is a bit handsome. Hastur just looked at it and said, it's barely enough. Haha, okay. Sauron Einhorn Medici laughed. 3 faces and 3 pairs of eyes were all staring at Hastur, as if he wanted to observe from the subtle facial expressions that Hastur was most real at this moment. Idea. Unfortunately, they didn't see anything. As for his expression management, Hastur believes that he has reached a point where even he can't see through it. In the meeting of stars, playing the role of stars in front of a group of outer gods in the past is much more difficult and stressful than the current situation. Meow. Azishara suddenly called out, jumped from the window sill onto Hastur's lap, and glanced at Sauron Einhorn Medici with scrutiny. Just this glance made Sauron Einhorn Medici's expression become slightly more solemn. Hastur lowered his head slightly and stroked Azishara's hair, and said calmly, Today, it's time to make a decision whether you are guests or evil spirits. Ah, Fred. Even Adam sitting here today would not dare to talk to me like this. Sauron Einhorn Medici's expression turned completely cold, and his whole body exuded the aura of iron-blooded killing as when the war started. Hastur curled his lips slightly and said, If Adam really was sitting here today, you probably wouldn't even be able to get out of this gate, just bluffing and trying to scare away the predator's sheep. Do you think you've got us? Sauron Einhorn Medici put away his long legs and leaned forward slightly. His eyes were cold and menacing, and an aura of iron-blooded murder was like billowing smoke, heading straight towards Hastur. A sneeze. Azishara wrinkled her nose and sneezed, and the aura of war that came straight away disappeared. Hastur lowered his head and rubbed Azishara's head. Does this breath disgust you? Meow. Azishara replied, lying on Hastur's lap and closing her eyes slightly. This cat is very interesting. Sauron Einhorn Medici's eyes fell on Azishara again, and this time they looked at it longer. Hastur didn't speak, just looked at them. Who are you? This is the second time Sauron Einhorn Medici has asked this question. No matter how they looked at it, they couldn't clearly see the true origin of Hastur, and even a cat was a bit elusive to them. Solve the matter here early, and you still have time to catch the last ferry leaving Punning Port today. Hey, my stuff isn't that easy to get. Sauron Einhorn Medici chuckled and flicked the red priest card on his fingertips to Hastur. Azishara opened her eyes in confusion, subconsciously stretched out her front paws, grabbed the red priest card like a small dried fish, and took a bite of it. She felt that the taste was a bit off, and she sighed with disgust on her face. Sauron Einhorn Medici was also a little speechless. This cat really stole the show. The face on the left cheek said, Are there any other survivors alive in the Solomon Empire? Gee, do you think you are a descendant of Solomon? He should have sensed the aura of the Black Emperor on his body. Asta's mind moved, with an elegant and calm smile on his face. History will never be cut off. Medici sneered. Even if he is really a descendant of Solomon, are you two going to rush to show your loyalty? The faces on the left and right cheeks did not speak, as if they were recalling the era of the Solomon Empire. At first, the two of them were loyal to the Black Emperor Solomon. Later, the Black Emperor Solomon fell because of the joint efforts of the 6 gods. They turned to follow the Night Emperor Trunsost, but unfortunately the Night Emperor also fell in the Battle of the 4 Emperors. The Crazy Blood Emperor Alistair Tudor successfully promoted to the Sequence 0 Red Priest. They played a crucial role in this, but even the Crazy Blood Emperor Alistair Tudor lost in the end, leaving only the Hades Emperor as the biggest winner of the Battle of the 4 Emperors. That magnificent era is far from being comparable to the present era. Speaking of loyalty, your loyalty is the most steadfast one. Hasta said this from the heart. Hunters die of loyalty, and that's what the Red Angel Medici said. Haha, is Black Emperor Solomon worthy of being compared with my lord? Medici raised his head slightly, very proud, and at the same time did not forget to belittle Black Emperor Solomon. After all, belittling the Lord is equivalent to belittling his followers. Sure enough, Soren and Einhorn started to curse. Hasta looked at Medici deeply without saying anything. Black Emperor Solomon really can't be compared with the real creator. After all, the Black Emperor didn't sacrifice his loyal subordinates. It's ridiculous to talk about loyalty without talking about interests in the mysterious world. So Medici's loyalty will be impressive. If there's nothing else, you can leave. Hasta, who was a little annoyed by the noise of the 3 people opposite, issued an order to expel them. Today's visit by Soren Einhorn Medici was not what he expected, and he didn't want to have too much to do with them. It's just a passing goose, and it's not bad to take the opportunity to leave a Red Priest card. He just needed this Red Priest card to understand the situation of the Red Priest path, so as to provide options for the future. As for imprisoning the evil spirit of Soren Einhorn Medici, Madame Lisa alone does not have the ability to do so. If Ouroboros had not been staring at the star container on the ship, there would still be a chance. The key is that Soren Einhorn Medici's Sequence 1 Beander characteristic is no longer there. Even if he cooks hot pot again now, he cannot be successfully promoted to Red Priest. Not to mention that he is still a long way from being able to cook hot pot. Soren Einhorn Medici laughed and did not think of getting up and leaving. Instead, he chuckled and said, "A broken desk is not worth this Red Priest card. If you want to keep it, you need more chips." As he spoke, Soren Einhorn Medici gently hooked his right index finger, and the Red Priest card that was originally caught by Azishara returned to his hand again. Azishara woke up immediately, her eyes widened, looking at her empty little paws, and her eyes turned to the Red Priest card, which began to become deep and dark. The atmosphere in the study room completely cooled down in an instant, and Soren Einhorn Medici's eyelids twitched slightly, revealing a little doubt. Hasta gently stroked Azishara's head, glanced at them, and said calmly, "In addition to raising a cat, I also raised a bird. He likes to eat insects, especially 3 insects mixed together. The taste should be richer." Soren Einhorn Medici frowned slightly, thinking about the meaning of Hasta's words. At this moment, a spiritual world crack silently appeared in a corner of the study room. A palm-sized firebird flew out and landed on Hasta's shoulder. The seemingly small firebird stared at Soren Einhorn Medici sitting on the sofa as soon as it came out, with eyes as bright as fire and full of a little desire, as if it had encountered some kind of feast that could not be missed. Soren Einhorn Medici's body trembled unconsciously. That little bird. Go! Soren Einhorn Medici's face changed, and he threw the Red Priest card to Hasta, and then left here quickly. Chirp! The little firebird looked up at Hasta, as if asking whether to chase him. Don't be in a hurry, eating indiscriminately will cause indigestion. Chirp! The little firebird lowered its head and combed its feathers with its beak. Meow! Azishara looked up at the little firebird, then shuddered all over, and her deep eyes returned to their previous clear stupidity. Meow! Azishara looked at Hasta with puzzled eyes. Hasta did not speak, but gently rubbed its little head. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Chapter 323 Hades Emperor Salinger? Mrs. Lisa, you have been in the same brain with this little guy. Hasta suddenly chuckled and said, Lisa was hiding in Azishara's body just now, so that Soren Einhorn Medici was afraid. The temptation from them was also resolved by Mrs. Lisa in secret. It is my honor to serve the Lord of God. Mrs. Lisa's voice came from Azishara's mind. Meow! Azishara, who was lying on Asta's thigh, suddenly called out, stood up, put her 2 front paws on Asta's chest, and looked around with her dark blue eyes, full of doubts and fear. Asta stroked Azishara's head and said, "Don't worry, little guy. Mrs. Lisa will return the brain to you later." Meow. Azishara immediately shuddered all over. What kind of devil speech is this? Lord God, the evil spirit just now is not simple. You must be extra careful when dealing with related matters. Faced with Lady Lisa's reminder, Hasta nodded. When Lady Lisa completely left Azishara's mind, Azishara whimpered in grievance. She didn't understand what happened at all. She only knew that her brain seemed to have been stolen. It's okay. Your brain is too small to see, and it's useless on weekdays. It's lost. Meow. Azishara's hair stood up. She jumped off Hasta's thigh, and quickly rushed out of the study. She should be looking for Sharon for comfort. Chirp. The phoenix Greygary standing on Hasta's shoulder flapped her wings, opened a spiritual world channel and left. Hasta and 008 were the only ones left in the study. You should stay in the pencil case for the time being and don't come out. 008 just shook slightly, but didn't protest. He probably knew that he might attract more troublesome people. After putting 008 into the pencil case, Hasta put the red priest card into the page of the Fate Weaver and took it back to his bedroom along with the pencil case. On the way, he met a maid who was usually responsible for cleaning the study and asked her to buy a good desk. Back in the bedroom, Hasta sat in front of the windowsill and opened the page of the Fate Weaver with the red priest card, and began to read the contents recorded on it carefully. This red priest card is different from the Black Emperor card. It has been opened by Soren Einhorn Medici in advance and does not require any opening spell. Extraordinary Path of the Red Priest, Sequence 9, Hunter. Sequence 8. Provocateur Sequence 7. Arsonist Sequence 6, Conspirator. Sequence 5. Reaper Sequence 4. Iron Knight Sequence 3, War Bishop. Sequence 2. Weather Warlock Sequence 1, Conqueror. Sequence 0. Red Priest Asta's eyes slightly glanced at the previous content and focused on the content after Sequence 4 Iron Knight. Unlike the Witch Path, the Hunter Path will only change from a female to a male when reaching Sequence 4. This is the most iron-blooded and true manly extraordinary path, and all extraordinary people above Sequence 4 are male. Asta carefully read the promotion ceremony and potion formula behind Sequence 4 Iron-Blooded Knight several times until he remembered them completely. He can now ask the Yellow Monk organization to start looking for the extraordinary materials and an Iron-Blooded Knight extraordinary characteristics required for promotion to Iron-Blooded Knight. Although he may not necessarily cross the path, there is absolutely nothing wrong with preparing in advance. After reading it, Asta also took out the Black Emperor card and the Witch card. Arranging the 3 blasphemy cards neatly on the table, Asta felt a sense of satisfaction from collecting figurines. The premise is to ignore the 3 completely different images of Roussel on the 3 blasphemy cards. If there is a chance, you can try to collect a complete set of 22 blasphemy cards. After Asta admired it with satisfaction for a while, he clipped the 3 blasphemy cards into the Book of Fate Weaver as bookmarks, and at the same time pressed the pencil case containing 008 on the book. After thinking about it, he felt that it was not safe to let 008 suppress it, so he let the golden box bear this burden. I believe that no one can take the Fate Weaver with 3 blasphemous cards from the golden box without alarming him. Although 008 wanted to stay with the Fate Weaver, he was too afraid of the golden box and chose to stay in Hasta's study. At the port of Punan, Soren Einhorn Medici was honestly queuing up to buy a ticket. It was not until he boarded the ferry and the ferry left the port facing the sunset that they were truly relieved. Today's experience made them, who were well informed, murmur. They naturally saw that the little black cat was unusual, but they could not accurately see through the truth hidden in its body. This unknown made them feel afraid. The young nobleman used Adam and Amen to scare people all the time, and saw through their true identities at a glance. They thought it might be someone they knew, but they rejected the idea. What shocked them the most was the little firebird that came from the spirit world at the end. They could never mistake the aura he exuded. The aura of the Hades King Salinger. In addition to his breath, there is also an even more ancient breath, which is suspected to be the phoenix ancestor Grey Carey who died long ago. Could it be that the Hades Emperor Salinger and the Phoenix Ancestor have also successfully merged together like their state? Then who is the leader of the Phoenix that just appeared? And what is the origin of the young nobleman who was protected by the Phoenix? Or, is that young noble the real Hades Emperor Salinger? For a death god, even if he dies, he will definitely leave a means of resurrection. Unless the next death god appears, it is possible to make the previous death god completely dead. Since the Hades Emperor Salinger, there has been no new death god. This means that the Hades Emperor Salinger is very likely to successfully resurrect and return. Now that a war has happened in the South Continent, the shadow of death and war has enveloped the entire South Continent. It is hard to say that it is not the Hades Emperor Salinger who is behind it. They should be thankful that it is not the Blood Emperor Alistair Tudor who has resurrected, otherwise they will become the hot pot base stewed in one pot again today. Although the kingdom of the seven gods is no longer on this land, we still cannot take it lightly, especially in our current state. This body is gradually unable to support us. We need a new and suitable body, and we also need to hurry up to recover our strength. This place is very close to Bansi Port. We can go there and use the things left there to recover some strength. You don't want to be scared away by others all the time, right? This time, Soren and Einhorn did not oppose Medici's suggestion. They urgently needed to recover some strength. If they met Adam and Aemon, their situation would be very bad. The reason why they were killed by the Blood Emperor Alistair Tudor was not only because of Medici's stupidity, but also because Adam and Aemon, the brothers, worked together to plot against them behind their backs. If you ask me, why bother? Let me pray to the Lord directly, and then join the big snake. We have plenty of time to recover our strength. Don't dream. Sauron and Einhorn rebuked Medici's delusion in unison. Evil gods like the real creator, they will not go to the kingdom where he is. Moreover, given the relationship between Medici and the real creator, the two of them would most likely have their consciousness erased to fulfill Medici. Ignorance has made you betray the Lord, and one day you will understand who the real creator is. Medici disdainfully refuted, and soon, the three of them began to abuse and argue with each other again. Bansi Port, outside the port was an ironclad ship of the Kingdom of Loen, and several large warships. It is better to flatten the entire Bansi Port directly, so that the disaster here can be completely eliminated. On the ironclad ship, a person in charge of the Storm Church had a cold face and a murderous tone. Greysty, who was injured and looked weak, immediately stopped him and said, "No, there are still many people trapped inside, and my teammate Klein is now missing. Once Bansi Port is flattened, it will also be his last chance of survival. Do you want to use other people's lives to fill the hole in Bansi Port?" This. Greysty could not resist. He had personally experienced the Bansi Port incident and knew very well the horror inside. If they still can't come out alive before 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, they will become history together with Bansi Harbor. This is the last mercy I can give them. Grest didn't say anything else. This is indeed the best way at the moment. As time passed, from the night to the new dawn, Grest's heart sank a little bit as the sun rose. He never saw Klein coming out of Bansi Harbor. Time's up. The head of the Storm Church ordered the ironclad ship and other warships to fire at the same time. One by one, the shells fell on Bansi Harbor, which was not very large in area, and every inch of the place was thoroughly cleaned up. Under this bombardment, Klein had no chance of survival. "Klein, I will take good care of your family for you." Grest was filled with grief and bowed deeply to Bansi Harbor, which was in constant flames. Chapter 324 Medici, the place that was bombed seems to be your home? Could that place that was bombarded by artillery fire be the Bansi Port you mentioned? Soren pretended to be surprised. Medici, your old nest was bombed. Einhorn spoke more directly. Medici was silent for a while. He finally came back, but saw that the artillery fire in front of him was destroying their family's former residence. He felt very complicated. "Why did you suddenly stop talking? It's really rare. You will also be affected by such things. Do you look like such an emotional creature? You look more pleasing to the eye than before when you recall the past, although you still make people want to nauseate." Sauron and Einhorn will not miss the opportunity to mock Medici. HMPH, Medici snorted coldly. "Just them? Even if they bombard this place for hundreds of years, they can't really destroy it." Sauron said, "Really? What if they invite that tyrant?" Medici said indifferently, The things here are not enough for him to come here in person. Medici, you are always so overconfident. The stupidity of confidence makes you unable to see the current situation clearly. After Einhorn finished speaking, he reminded them to look up at the storm group that was constantly gathering and compressing in the sky. The dark clouds hung down, as if to cover the entire Bansi port. There were violent storms and thunder roaring inside. This posture is not something that ordinary extraordinary people can create. With the whimpering and whistling of the storm, the whole sea began to surge and make a fuss. Something is wrong. Sauron Einhorn Medici noticed that something was wrong. The storm in the sea ahead was getting stronger and stronger, pressing the entire sea level down a lot. That tyrant is really going to descend from the sky. Medici, what on earth are you doing in Bansi Harbor that would attract the Lord of Storms to descend from the sky? Medici was also very confused about this. It shouldn't be possible. How could the things here attract the Lord of Storms to descend from the sky? Is he too idle? Soren Einhorn Medici stood on the boat, holding his breath and observing for a while, then a look of horror appeared in his eyes. Someone actually fought with the Lord of Storms who descended from the sky in Bansi Harbor. Although Sequence 1 and Sequence 0 are only one step apart, this step is a complete qualitative change. Although the Lord of Storms is only a descending from the sky, the status of a true god is there, and he also has divine power. Who is fighting with the Lord of Storms there? Could it be the brothers Adam and Ammon? Look at this scene. The Lord of Storms came with rage. Could it be that the little crow really stole the temple of the Church of Storms? We should stay away from him so that the Lord of Storms won't detect our presence. Sauron Einhorn Medici took a small boat and pulled away a long distance. After making sure that he would not be discovered, he continued to watch the battle in the distance, the outcome of which was still unknown. Medici was a little uneasy and said, "Is the seal there really broken?" Medici, what is hidden in Bansi port? Sauron and Einhorn had suspected that the Lord of Storms' descent was abnormal. It was definitely not just because of provocation. His descent must have a deeper purpose. Damn it! Medici became more and more uneasy. That was the place where he first discovered and established his family, but now, he could only watch from afar and let others break into his home to plunder the wealth that should belong to him. Soren and Einhorn would not let Medici hide, and the faces on both sides of his cheeks struggled to tear out. Medici, who was annoyed, only left one sentence. Either let me pray to the Lord and pray for the Lord's coming, or don't try to find out anything from me. The surging waves, fierce storms, and fierce collisions, the entire Bansi port was completely destroyed. When the storm gradually dissipated, there was only a vast sea in front of us. Originally there should be an island here, and there was a Bansi port on the island. Now the entire island has been sunk and completely sunk into the sea. Since then, there is no Bansi port. When Soren Einhorn Medici arrived here, he could only sigh in despair. Medici had a completely dark face and didn't want to speak, while Soren and Einhorn were slowly analyzing the outcome of the Battle of Bansi port. In the end, the Lord of the Storm should have won, and he also deliberately sent down divine punishment to completely wipe out Bansi port, as if to cover up something. As for the one who fought with the Lord of Storms, it was not the brothers Adam and Ammon, but someone with a strong aura of space latitude. A bit like the Mr. Men who almost ascended to the throne of God. That was a more difficult and terrifying existence than the brothers Adam and Ammon. It's time to go. It will definitely attract a lot of people to come and check it out later. Hee, isn't this a ready-made bait? It's indeed time to change a body. Look forward to a good harvest. Soren and Einhorn discussed one by one. Only Medici kept a gloomy face and kept silent. About an hour after they left, the members of the Storm Church arrived by boat. After the gods' descent was successful, they were sent away from the battlefield by the Lord of Storms, and they did not come to check until the battle was over. On the empty sea, there was no trace of Bansi port, and even the island was swallowed by the sea. Only some wooden house fragments and smoking wood residues were left on the sea. Grest was even more sad. Not only was he unable to save Klein, he couldn't even save his body. The Lord of Storms came in person to perform divine punishment. Even if Klein was still lucky enough to be alive in Bansi port at that time, he was now reduced to a pile of broken bones. No one can survive the Stormlord's divine punishment. St. Samuel's Church. Leonard was again summoned by Archbishop Anthony. When he learned that the Lord of Storms had descended and wiped out the entire port of Bansi, and that even Klein's body was turned into powder under the thunder, Leonard was stunned for a moment. After several days of waiting, I still didn't get good news, but bad news. I know what to do. I'll go to Klein's house in the afternoon. Leonard tried hard to suppress the grief in his heart, returned to his room, lay on the bed and closed his eyes silently. He is no longer in the mood to ask the old man what secrets are hidden in Banksea Port. He didn't know how to tell his family and the captain in Tinghan City about Klein's death. Punning Port. News of the accident in Banksea Port soon spread from the sea to Punning Port. Hastur has already known this news. He even witnessed the battle between the high-dimensional Overlooker and the Lord of Storms in the Hall of Stars. Unfortunately, he only saw the second half of the battle. The high-dimensional Overlooker lost. He was just an incarnation cast down from the depths of the starry sky. After all, he was still inferior to the Lord of Storms who had the right time and place. But the incarnation of the high-dimensional Overlooker did not dissipate because of this. It was still alive, but suffered a certain degree of wear and tear. If the high-dimensional Overlooker were not determined to arm wrestle with the Stormlord, he could easily get rid of the Stormlord. His authority can be regarded as a high-end version of Mr. Men, who can easily stay away from the battlefield. With the power of the Hall of Stars, Hastur also peeked into some secrets. Banksea Port is indeed a place penetrated and influenced by the power of the City of Disaster. This is a bit like the tributary opened up by the river of eternal darkness deep in the spiritual world. As the end approaches, the seals set by the former Lord of Mysteries are gradually losing their effectiveness, and the source matter sealed in the western continent can already reveal some pollution. This is why the Stormlord insists on destroying Banksea Port. If left unchecked, Banksea Port will be completely polluted by the City of Disaster. Once a high-sequence hunter path extraordinary approaches, they will inevitably be unable to resist the temptation and instinct, which will prompt the City of Disaster to be further unsealed. Asta guessed that the reason why there was so much commotion in Banksea Port this time was because of Medici's escape and, secondly, because of Klein's approach. The aura of Saphiric Castle on his body is the real reason why City of Disaster's pollution of Banksea Port is even more serious. On an unknown sea area, an empty oak barrel was floating on the sea. Klein was lying on the oak barrel and was woken up by the incoming waves. "I'm alive." Klein gradually regained consciousness, coughed a few more times, and vomited out some seawater that accidentally washed into his stomach. His pale face was whiter than the sand on the beach not far ahead. When he was pushed to the beach by the waves, Klein turned over with difficulty and lay on his back on the sand. His eyes, which were not yet fully focused, stared at the blue sky. He didn't think he could still be alive. When the Banksea Port incident occurred, he was indeed trapped inside and had difficulty getting out, but he did not die. When the Stormlord came, he also felt the huge changes in the outside world. At that time, he really thought he was going to die under the thunder of the Stormlord. But deep in the Banksea Port, a force suddenly came and swept away him, everyone around him, and the thunder of the Stormlord. During that time of panic and confusion, he seemed to see a huge, dilapidated ancient city disappearing in the mist. Surrounded by the aura of disaster and chaos, it is somewhat similar to the aura of witches. Or should I say, it is the aura of disaster that represents a higher level. Chapter 325. It's Klein who is embarrassed, not Mr. Fool. Now, Klein didn't know where he was. He had only one thought at the moment, to recover some strength first and then find something to eat. He really felt that he could eat a pig in 3 bites. His stomach was filled with only acid and seawater, and he was almost starving. After resting for about half an hour, Klein felt that his hands and feet had regained some sensation and he could move his body a little. He couldn't lie on the beach to recover his strength. Just now, when he was staring at the sky in a daze, he was so hungry that he wanted to shoot down the seabirds flying in the sky one by one, put them on the fire, sprinkle some salt and roast them until they were fragrant. His saliva was about to flow down, which stimulated Klein to gain some strength and stand up. He staggered towards the inner circle of the island. He didn't see a single person on the road, which made him a little panicked. If he really landed on an uninhabited island, wouldn't he become Robinson Crusoe? More importantly, he had no hunting ability at all now. A wild boar could knock him out. Walking slowly along the beach, The long beach line told Klein that the high tide here at night would be amazing. About 20 minutes later, when Klein was about to stop walking, green plants finally appeared in front of him. Unfortunately, it was not a coconut tree. The green in front of him was thorns that were almost black. The thorns were dense and blocked all the roads ahead. Klein pursed his dry lips and smiled bitterly. He felt that he no longer had the strength to pass through the thorns in front of him. Just when he was desperate, he suddenly remembered a key question. He just needed food and water now, but these two things did not have to be obtained from this island. I was so hungry that I even forgot such a simple method. Klein laughed at himself, and then he felt happy. He glanced around and found a relatively secluded thorn bush. When he confirmed that there was nothing or anyone nearby, he walked 4 steps back to the gray fog. Mr. Fool, sitting high on the bronze table, swept away the embarrassment of struggling to survive on the deserted island. He first used the power of the gray fog to observe the movements around his body in the real world. He confirmed that there was nothing abnormal, and then he was relieved. After leaning back to relax a little, Klein thought of the corresponding words, and then found the light of Miss Justice. First, he controlled his body to put on a pious prayer posture, and said in a tone as calm as possible, "Dear Mr. Fool, I am unfortunately trapped on an uninhabited deserted island, without water and food. I am willing to use gold pounds or extraordinary knowledge to seek transactions with your believers. I need a lot of water and food." At this point, Klein swallowed unconsciously. Above the gray fog, Klein threw this prayer and picture directly to Miss Justice. Backland, Earl Hall's house. Audrey happened to have no homework this afternoon, and was leisurely enjoying afternoon tea in her large garden. On the dining carts on both sides, there were more than a dozen delicious desserts. Influenced by Mr. Asta, she now has a special liking for desserts, especially those that are not too sweet. Next to her, Susie was also wearing a white napkin and eating a plate of pan-fried beef ribs. Since she learned more and more knowledge from books, Susie has gradually learned how to be a good person. Especially in terms of diet, she is determined not to eat raw bloody meat, but like Audrey, she wants to enjoy the dishes cooked by professional chefs. She is not used to eating green vegetables yet, and all kinds of pan-fried and grilled meat are more to her taste. Audrey spoke in a brisk tone. "Susie, Mr. Asta wrote to me this morning. In the letter, he thanked me for reminding him some time ago. He has completely solved the pirate group on Demir Island and has cleared out the pirates who robbed merchant ships many times." Susie, who was busy competing with the pan-fried beef ribs, looked up at Audrey, who was enjoying the dessert, and then looked down at the food on the plate. Woof! It finally decided to abandon the human eating habits, and chose to press the grilled beef short ribs with its 2 front paws, and then chew it directly. "Susie, I've told you many times that you should eat elegantly and not in a hurry. Just like doing things, you have to take your time." Bang! A crisp sound was the sound of a teacup falling to the ground and breaking. Susie looked up again and found that Audrey stood up suddenly for some reason. It was she who accidentally knocked over the teacup just now. It was about to say something when it saw the maid who came over after hearing the noise. It ignored it and continued to fight with the food in its mouth. Faced with the maid's worried inquiries, Audrey hesitated for a while, and then calmly explained, "You know, Susie always likes to move around when eating. I have told it many times, but it has never been able to change it, so it just hit the table leg and knocked over the teacup." Woof! Susie looked up at Audrey with a blank face. Audrey gave Susie an apologetic look, indicating that it should take care of this matter first. After settling the matter here, Audrey got up and left the garden, went to the kitchen, and asked the kitchen to prepare 2 appropriate amounts of food and water and send them to her room. Faced with the doubtful eyes of the maids delivering meals, she could only say again, "You know, Susie is growing up recently, and she needs to eat a lot. I am a little worried that Susie will grow too fat." Woof! Susie, who was following Audrey, naturally heard this sentence. After closing the door of the room, Audrey said to Susie with an apologetic look, "Susie, I wronged you just now. I can only do it in your name so as not to arouse their suspicion." "It's okay, Audrey, I can eat those 2 portions of food." Audrey was silent for a while and said awkwardly, "Susie, I have other uses for those 2 portions of food. You should stay outside for the time being to prevent anyone from coming in." Susie left the room with a puzzled look and stood guard at the door. When she was left alone, Audrey patted her chest gently and was completely relieved. She didn't expect that Mr. Fool would suddenly contact her just now. And the reason for contacting her was just to want some simple water and food. That poor man trapped on an uninhabited island should be a follower of Mr. Fool, right? Audrey thought about it, and then arranged a sacrificial ceremony around the 2 portions of food and water. Fool who does not belong to this era. You are the mysterious master above the gray fog. You are the yellow and black king who controls good luck. Your loyal servant prays for your attention. Please accept her offering. Please open the door of the kingdom. When the ancient spell echoed in the spiritual wall, when the strong wind was dyed with silver and dark black respectively. Constantly colliding, constantly merging, and throwing into the candlelight that symbolizes the Fool. An illusory door composed of wind and light slowly opened, and behind it was deep darkness, countless almost invisible shadows, and a clear light containing huge knowledge. Above everything was the thick gray fog that could not be dissolved, and an ancient palace overlooking the real world. In the center of it all were 2 grilled steaks, 2 golden fish, 4 different types of sausages, a loaf of white bread, 2 red bean cakes, and 2 cups of pure water, each containing 2 liters. The contrast between divinity and food made Audrey's eyes sparkle. This is the real extraordinary world. It looks absurd and magical. When the 2 portions of food and water disappeared with the illusory door, Audrey prayed again. Dear Mr. Fool, please tell the poor helper that it is difficult for me to take out too much food and water at once, and I need to complete the transaction in batches. In response to Audrey's supplement, Mr. Fool in the ancient palace just nodded slightly, indicating that he would pass on the news. When all the extraordinary phenomena disappeared, Audrey excitedly waved her fist. Today's little episode made her already cheerful mood even happier. On the beach, outside the thorny jungle, Klein looked at the still warm food and pure water in front of him, and was so moved that tears almost flowed out. Miss Justice was really reliable and considerate. In addition to the necessary food and water, she also sent him 2 desserts. Klein, who knew that he should not eat too much when hungry, first drank water in small sips. After his thirst was relieved a little, he slowly tore off a small piece of white bread and ate it. Finally, he solved the grilled steak and grilled fish. It took more than an hour for Klein to completely finish this life-saving meal. When he thought about how he actually went to Miss Justice to ask for food and water in the image of Mr. Fool, his cheeks were a little hot. On second thought, it was only Klein who was embarrassed. What did Mr. Fool have to do with it? Besides, isn't it normal to solve problems in the extraordinary world through extraordinary abilities? Haha, other extraordinary people can't imitate it even if they want to. After a little preparation for his fragile and shy heart, Klein stood up and walked along the beach to digest the food. Chapter 326. A world fed by justice. At night, Audrey, who was about to go to bed, received another video from Mr. Fool. In the video, the man whose appearance could not be seen clearly was standing on the beach and praying to Mr. Fool. Dear Mr. Fool, please help tell your believers that today's deal is valid until I leave the deserted island. After leaving the deserted island, I can use extraordinary knowledge, magic potion formulas, gold pounds, etc. to repay the debts I owe. If she has any requests, she can also raise them, as long as I can do it. Audrey watched this video silently, thought for a while, and asked, Mr. Fool, what should I call the man in trouble? You can call him the World. The World? Audrey's eyes lit up. Is he also a member of our tarot club? Well, he will be a new member of the tarot club. Audrey said with satisfaction. Please tell Mr. Fool that Mr. World can discuss the subsequent debt repayment at the tarot club. I will prepare the water and food he needs for him regularly. By the way, in addition to some daily food, do you need to prepare fruit snacks, desserts and other things for him? Mr. Fool above the gray fog said with a smile. I think he will not refuse any good intentions at this time. Audrey ended the conversation with satisfaction, and Mr. Fool above the gray fog was slightly relieved. With Miss Justice's wealth and credit, he does not need to worry about water and food for the time being. You can have a good rest tonight and explore the island tomorrow. The next day, just after dawn, Miss Justice sent Klein a bunch of food and enough pure water through Mr. Fool. The breakfast has a wide variety of varieties, with good color, fragrance and taste, and looks extremely rich. In addition, there is a large bag of fruit. This should be Miss Justice's ordinary breakfast every day. Klein ate the food in front of him with emotion. The gold pounds he earned every day might not be as much as Miss Justice's daily food expenses. The gap between people is really too big. After a nutritious breakfast and a good rest last night, Klein was full of energy. He took out the pocket watch that was still in his jacket pocket and had not been swept away. It showed that it was 9:23. He picked up a hard wooden stick on the beach, and then began to explore the inner circle of the island. The further he went, the more depressed Klein felt. Except for the seabirds flying in the sky, there was not even a trace of wild animals on this island, let alone people. From early morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Klein walked through the thorny jungle and came to a relatively open flat land. In the center of this flat land, there was a building made of large stones, similar to a church. This made Klein secretly happy. This building should have been built by people, which shows that there were people living on this island. Do you want to go in and take a look? Klein always felt that the stone church in front of him was a bit evil, which was a spiritual warning. As a fortune teller, he would naturally choose to do a divination first when encountering such a situation. He took out the pocket watch in his pocket and held the pocket watch chain to let it act as a pendulum. There is a great danger inside this stone church. After making a divination statement, the pocket watch began to shake and finally turned to the negative side. This is the result of the divination, Klein whispered, then quickly withdrew and stayed away from the stone church. He had many divination experiences and knew that divination in the real world was easily affected by extraordinary power. His spirituality was warning, but the result of the divination was not a problem at all. This was definitely the result of the divination after being deceived. If the result of the divination just now showed a slight affirmation, he might have hesitated. Now, hesitating for one more second would be disrespectful to his own life. Just as Klein quickly fled to the outer circle of the island, a thick black fog surged out of the stone church behind him and continued to spread. The cold air rushed straight to Klein's back, which made him look back. There were countless ghosts in the black fog, some of which had gradually condensed into entities, like wearing a black armor. Klein then understood why there were only black-green thorns on this island, and no traces of any beasts. Because they were all eaten by the things in the stone church. If he had walked into the stone church just now, it would be like delivering meat to the door. Klein sped up his escape. Fortunately, the thorn bushes on the road had been cleared by him, allowing him to escape faster. The speed of the black fog chasing him was not too fast, which gave him time to escape. But his physical strength was seriously exhausted when he was about to approach the beach. The black fog behind him was still approaching. Fortunately, the bonfire he lit last night was still emitting a ball of flames. Flame jump. Klein used the extraordinary ability of a magician to avoid the surging black fog, and then quickly ran into the sea to create an invisible air tube, allowing him to hide under the water and breathe the air freely. Looking through the water, Klein was surprised to find that the thick black fog had covered the entire island, and even the sea level was covered. Fortunately, the black fog did not invade the seawater. Klein hid for more than an hour, and the black fog gradually retreated and dissipated. He had just come out of the seawater, and the foaming of the seawater made him feel uncomfortable all over. It was not until he lit a bonfire and dried his clothes that he felt much better. Having figured out that there were no living people on this island, Klein planned to build a bunch of bonfires along the coastline, raising black smoke to attract the attention of nearby ships. Only in this way could he escape from this deserted island. On Monday, Klein, who had already built 12 bonfires on the coastline, came to the gray fog and prepared to hold this week's tarot club. In order to deal with Miss Justice, he used the fake identity of the world, and this time he let the world participate in today's tarot club. When he was in Backland before, he thought about getting a fake identity to join the tarot club so that he could cooperate with him. But he never really implemented it, and this time it was the turn of the world to appear. It was just right to use the new identity of the world to send a commission to Mr. Hanged Man to see if he could rescue him from the deserted island. After creating the world's trumpet, Klein set up his identity, personality, and behavior, so that the world would look more like a living person. A wild, extraordinary person who is adventurous and loves to explore. In terms of personality, he is usually taciturn and is a man of action. After all these details were taken care of, Klein manipulated the new identity of the world and said, "Good afternoon, Mr. Fool." "Hello, Mr. World." Mr. Fool replied with a smile. After everything was ready, Mr. Fool convened the Tarot Club for this week. When the other members of the Tarot Club came above the gray fog and saw the world, they were all stunned for a moment. Audrey was the first to react, her eyes lit up slightly, and she began to observe and analyze Mr. World. Although she had been feeding Mr. World for several days, she had never really talked to him. Today, Mr. World came earlier than them, which shows that he has been communicating with Mr. Fool for some time. It seems that Mr. World is in a very bad situation. Mr. Fool sat at the head of the bronze table, looked around at everyone, and explained, "This is the world. He will attend the weekly tarot club like you in the future." Klein controlled the world to stand up at the right time, and nodded to everyone with a stern face. The other members quickly accepted the new member, the world, except for the hanged man, Alger, who showed a little displeasure. He instinctively felt uncomfortable and wary of the new member. The tarot club is now dominated by him and Miss Justice. Miss Magician doesn't like to be in charge, she only likes to listen to other people's conversations and secretly record something. Little Son is simple-minded, even he can't bear to keep fleecing him, and he trusts him very much. That vampire is too naive, and his influence can be completely ignored. None of them can affect their status in the tarot club, but Mr. World is a little different. He looks like a wild, extraordinary person with rich experience. Such a person is difficult to deal with, and not so easy to satisfy. His arrival will definitely compete with him for the right to speak in the tarot club. Facing all kinds of eyes, the expression on the world's face did not move, and the whole person was like the deepest sea, and no matter how big the storm on the sea was, it could not shake him at all. Mr. Fool now focused on Rissel's diary. This time, Miss Justice handed in 2 pages of Rissel's diary, and the content was very rich. In addition to the necessary stories about Rissel's love affairs, many interesting things were mentioned, such as the sequence 0 of the Hunter Path is the Red Priest, and at sequence 4, women will become men, the opposite of witches. After Mr. Fool finished reading Rissel's diary, he looked at the Tarot Club members and signaled that they could start a free conversation. Audrey was the first to ask, "Mr. World, have you not gotten rid of your current predicament?" Chapter 327 Despair and Hope. As Audrey spoke, everyone else's eyes focused on her. World said calmly, "It's a bit troublesome indeed. I want to issue a commission for this. I need a ship to help me leave that uninhabited island." Audrey and the others turned their eyes to Alger. At present, only Mr. Hanged Man could solve the problem at sea. Alger suppressed his displeasure and said calmly, "There are many uninhabited islands on the sea. You need to give a specific location so that I can help you find a way to get a ship. It should be in the waters near the Ross Day Islands." World gave a more reliable location, which was the approximate location determined by his observation of the nearby waters, the starry sky above, the direction of the ocean currents, and many other aspects for several days. "Should?" Alger frowned slightly. "Yes, I drifted on the sea for a while before I landed on the deserted island. I can only guess that it is roughly located in the sea area near the Ross Day Islands." Alger shook his head and said, "The information you gave is too little. I don't have the ability to have people explore the sea area near the Ross Day Islands." The world was a little disappointed and said, "Is there no other feasible way? The sea is very dangerous, especially some places that have not been explored. There are also dangerous sea areas near the Ross Day Islands that need to be detoured. Your luck may be very bad." Alger thought about it and popularized to the world how to survive on an uninhabited deserted island and how to attract the attention of nearby ships. "Mr. Hanged Man, thank you for your help." The world thanked sincerely. Alger's face eased a lot, and his vigilance against this new member was dissipated a lot. Just after joining the Tarot Club, he asked Miss Justice and himself for help one after another. In the future, even if he gets out of trouble, he needs to give himself and Miss Justice 3 points in the right to speak in the Tarot Club. Furs, who never missed any detail, asked, "Mr. World, how did you end up on an uninhabited island?" "The ship I was on encountered huge waves and was unfortunately swept into the sea. I happened to be drifting on the sea with an empty oak barrel, and was finally pushed onto the beach of an uninhabited island by the waves." Furs nodded and silently recorded the relevant information of this new member in his heart. The world looked at Miss Justice, I am still trapped on an uninhabited island. I can repay the debt I owe with some extraordinary knowledge. Of course, you can choose to discuss this issue after I get out of trouble." Audrey said generously, "Mr. World, I deeply sympathize with your experience. Providing some food and water is just a small help. As a member of the Tarot Club, I don't need you to pay anything in return for this." As expected of Miss Justice, she didn't care about this little favor at all. Klein sighed in his heart and felt much more relaxed. After the Tarot Club ended, Klein returned to the deserted island and began to cut down thorny jungles and rare trees according to the knowledge of survival on the deserted island provided by Mr. Hanged Man. The thick smoke during the day and the fire at night are more likely to attract the attention of passing ships. The knowledge of survival on deserted islands includes how to reasonably and efficiently create thick smoke. Unfortunately, his luck was very bad. After staying on the deserted island for another week, he still did not encounter any ships passing by. This made him start to worry. Could the deserted island he was on be located in those dangerous waters? There is a terrible stone church on the island, which may really be listed as a restricted area not to be approached. During this period, he has explored the entire island. Except for the center of the island, there is nothing special in other places. This is an island with poor resources. I will not spend my whole life on this deserted island. Klein tried to use his underwater breathing ability to swim away from the deserted island, but the waves nearby were too big, one after another, hitting him back hard. As for cutting down trees to build ships, there are very few trees on the island, and most of them are malnourished and distorted. If Miss Justice can sacrifice a steamship to me, maybe there will be a chance to leave here. Klein thought a little whimsically, but unfortunately with his current strength, he can't do this. He may have this ability when he is promoted to a high sequence. Sitting by the campfire, Klein ate the strawberry-flavored ice cream from Backland with a sad face. Well, this thing was also fed to him by Miss Justice. In addition to ice cream, Miss Justice also fed him many good things that he couldn't eat or was reluctant to spend money on. This made him feel like he was kept in captivity by Miss Justice. Another 3 days passed, and Klein was hit on the beach by the ruthless waves again. Lying on the sand, looking up, looking at the seabirds that could fly freely in the sky, he sighed again. Just as another disappointing day was about to pass, Klein's peripheral vision suddenly caught a glimpse of a ship approaching here on the sea. He blinked in a daze, then quickly got up and rubbed his eyes. Sure enough, he clearly saw a small ship approaching slowly. Hope has finally come. Klein was overjoyed and quickly put the remaining wet firewood on the fire to create more smoke. At the same time, he waved a torn light gray canvas that drifted on the sea and shouted loudly, hoping that the people on the ship would notice this. He was really lucky. The ship was steadily heading in his direction. Apparently the people on the ship had seen the thick smoke here. In addition to being happy, Klein was also secretly vigilant. There were many pirates on the sea. Who knew whether this ship had good intentions or malicious intentions? In order to prevent any accidents, he quickly buried all the food scraps fed by Miss Justice with sand. When the ship gradually approached enough to see clearly what was going on board, Klein took a breath and took a few steps back. The figure sitting cross-legged on the bow of the ship was tall and thin, with silver hair that reached down to his vest. He was wearing a simple and plain linen robe, with overlapping wings of light on his back. Just at the first glance, a thought came to Klein's mind: angel. The figure on the boat basically corresponds to the angel image on the mural that Little Sun saw in the ruins of the temple. Klein's heart was beating violently, and his brain went blank for a moment. The angel entered the real world from myths and legends. I wonder if this angel could be the angel where the ancient sun god sat down, or the king of the 8 archangels? Can't think about these things. Klein tried to control himself not to think about the ancient sun god and the king of the 8 angels. My heart is full of worries. I wonder if my specialness will be noticed. But it was impossible for him to turn around and run away, because he simply could not escape in front of an angel, and such behavior did not fit the image of a castaway trying to survive on a desert island. The ship slowly arrived at the shore, just when Klein tried to pretend to be ecstatic and stepped forward to chat. The angel on the boat calmly glanced at him, then flapped his wings of light and flew into the sky, heading for the center of the island. Soon, violent noises were heard there, and the entire island made a rumbling sound as if it had been hit hard by a heavy hammer, and Klein was knocked to the ground. Another figure walked out of the boat at this moment. Although the figure's clothes and temperament were different from before, Klein could still recognize the figure's identity at a glance. Mr. A from the Aurora Society. It was Mr. A who took away the divinity from Lannerwis's body in front of them. Isn't he the person in charge of Aurora Club in Backland? How could he suddenly run to the sea and appear in front of him by chance? If he found out that he was a night watcher of the Church of the Night Goddess, he would definitely not let him go. Let alone whether he can defeat Mr. A, the shepherd of Sequence 5, the angel who is traveling with him can crush him to death a dozen times with one finger. Now, he could only hope that when he was trapped on a desert island for more than 10 days, his image would be very different from that of Backland, and he should not be noticed at a glance. After all, they only had a quick glance at it. Klein groaned secretly in his heart, but he still showed an expression of joy on his face and walked quickly to Mr. A. He bent down and bowed. "Sir, I am a castaway who unfortunately lives on a desert island. Thank you for coming. I hope you can take me away from here when you leave. I can pay enough for this." Klein's eyes were red and he was close to tears. Mr. A, who was looking at the movement in the center of the island, withdrew his gaze, looked at Klein, and said calmly, "Do I look like the kind of good person who likes to help others?" Klein was stunned when he heard this. Indeed, this is Mr. A from the Aurora Society. How could he do something to help a stranger? Leaving him alone on an uninhabited island to fend for himself was already his greatest mercy. If there were any secrets on this island, he would most likely kill himself. "Do you want to strike first?" This idea flashed through Klein's mind for a moment, but he didn't have time to act on it. That angel has already returned with wings of light, and the dangers on the island cannot yet deal with a genuine angel. He didn't want to die that much when he did it in front of an angel. Klein could only continue to apologize with a shy face. "As long as you can help me get out of here, I can pay you 1,000 gold pounds. Although he knew that 1,000 gold pounds was far from being able to impress an angel, he still tried his best to play the mood of a castaway who wanted to leave an uninhabited island. Mr. A ignored Klein, but spoke respectfully towards the figure landing on the bow of the ship. "Lord Aurelius, what happened just now?" "It's over, dead. This angel turned out to be Aurelius the Tail-Eater." The ancient sun god sat down with the Angel of Destiny, the king of the 8 angels. Klein's scalp was numb and he no longer had any hope that he could survive. Chapter 328 Klein, I broke into the Aurora Society's lair. Klein was deeply impressed by the Tail-Eater Aurelius. Just a mural left by him caused Little Sun and his group from Silver City to be trapped in the River of Destiny. Now that his true form is here, he is definitely a Sequence 1 Beander. This can be regarded as a follower of God. As a little Sequence 7 Beander, I had no possibility of escaping. Just when Klein was feeling uneasy and desperate, Aurelius's eyes fell on him for a while and he said, "There are many inconsistencies in your destiny." Klein's heart sank, and he felt more and more that he could not avoid this disaster today. "Have you ever seen another Mercury snake?" Aurelius' tone became higher, and his mood fluctuated slightly. Another Mercury snake? Was he talking about Will? It turns out that it was the Tail-Eater Aurelius who forced Will to hide in Backland. Klein opened his mouth, but finally said nothing. Mr. A's eyes followed Aurelius as he looked at Klein, and he chuckled and said, "So it's you, the Nighthawk of the Church of the Night. Shouldn't you be in Backland?" Alas, it was still seen. Klein sighed heavily. Since he could no longer avoid this disaster, he stopped pretending. "Mr. A of the Aurora Society, didn't you also leave Backland and come to the sea?" Before Mr. A could speak, Aurelius said with a cold face, "He is indeed still hiding in Backland." After saying that, he ignored Klein, flapped his wings of light to tear apart the portal of the spirit world, and flew away. Looking at him like this, he must be going to Backland to find Will and then devour him. Mr. A looked at Klein up and down for a while before saying, "You are very extraordinary. Even Lord Aurelius was alarmed by you." "This has nothing to do with me," Klein spoke while pulling away some distance. Now that the Tail-Eater Aurelius has left, although Mr. A in front of him is a Sequence 5 shepherd, he still has a slight chance. Before Aurelius comes back, deal with Mr. A, then steal the ship and leave the desert island. Without any hesitation, Klein suddenly took action. While pulling away from the body, his right hand fired air bullets by snapping his fingers. and his left hand held a few pieces of white paper and turned it into a flying knife and shot it. This was something he brought with him when he asked Miss Justice to feed him. "Do you think you can survive in my hands if Lord Aurelius is not here?" Mr. A didn't take it at all. His feet were surging in the wind. He just dodged a few times to avoid Klein's attacks. He also moved to a place 2 meters away in front of Klein. Light. Klein threw out the unused sun flame talisman. The blazing light flashed. Mr. A squinted his eyes for a moment, and the Klein air bullet was aimed at Mr. A's heart. Very smoothly, the air bullet penetrated Mr. A's heart, and then nothing happened again. Mr. A just sneered. This level of attack could not cause any substantial harm to him. The body approached again, and the mental impact was like a heavy hammer smashing through Klein's spiritual world. Klein groaned, blood dripping from his mouth and nose, his eyes were blurred and stupid. When countless tentacles of flesh and blood emerged from the ground and were about to wrap around his entire body, only a part of his clear mind helped him escape from this disaster through the paperman substitute. Mr. A just glanced disdainfully. Freeze. The extraordinary ability from the witch instantly froze the space near Klein, and his legs were also covered with a thick layer of ice. Mr. A set off another gust of wind that was ruthless enough to cut through flesh and blood, and surrounded him from all directions, trying to tear Klein, who was unable to move, into pieces. Klein quickly took out a destiny charm that Will had given him before leaving, saying it could change his destiny at a critical moment. He spoke in ancient Hermes very quickly and calmly. Destiny. As the destiny charm emits bright light, an illusory Ouroboros appears in midair, and destiny begins to restart. Klein, who was originally in a desperate situation, escaped from danger and returned to the time before his body was frozen. He quickly threw a cigarette box in the direction of Mr. A. Then snapped his fingers and passed through the fire 10 meters away. The flames on the pile completely distanced Mr. A. If you can't beat him, you have no chance of winning. Klein was breathing heavily, with cold sweat streaming down his temples. After just a few rounds of fighting, he was already on the verge of death several times. The Sequence 5 Shepherd's combat power is truly terrifying. With his ever-changing extraordinary abilities, coupled with Bishop Rose's control over flesh and blood, his attacks cannot really harm Mr. A at all. Unless, Mr. A goes crazy and loses control and kills himself. It is naturally impossible under normal circumstances, but if there are external incentives, there may be a chance, because the people of the Aurora Society are inherently crazy and are walking on the edge of losing control at any time. Sure enough, the contamination in the cigarette box caused Mr. A to make a painful sound. His body began to swell, and black viscous liquid flowed down his ears and eyes. Haha, the method is good, but if you want to kill me just like this, don't you think it's too naive? Mr. A took it upon himself to cut off the part of flesh and blood contaminated by the eyeball in the cigarette box. His sinister tone made Klein's heart sink. There was nothing in his hand that could threaten Mr. A. The gap between a Sequence 7 magician and a Sequence 5 shepherd is too big. It is not easy for him to hold on until now. But he will not stay and wait for death. He took a step and ran to the center of the island. Although the place was flattened by Ouroboros just now, there might be something that can change his fate of death. At this moment, the surroundings suddenly became quiet, the space began to stagnate, and time seemed to be paused. The expression of surprise and panic on Klein's face gradually expanded. When he felt that he had regained consciousness and regained control of his body, a tall figure appeared in the air in front of him. He was barefoot, handsome, and his eyes were like an abyss that could swallow people's sight mercilessly. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, as if he had encountered something interesting. Klein breathed rapidly, and his heart was completely cold. Mr. A was enough to suppress him and beat him, and there was another terrible enemy, which made him no longer want to continue to escape. The successive hopes and despairs really fulfilled the words Will gave him before he left. This is a rough and rugged journey. Mr. A, who was originally ferocious, now lowered his head and looked at the mysterious visitor with admiration. Could it be another angel? Klein was full of bitterness. It has only been a short time. Bansi Port encountered the arrival of the Lord of Storms, and now encountered 2 angels in succession. Such a fate is more than just rough and rugged. Sure enough, I should stay in Backland and not go out at will. Hastur looked at Klein, whose face was full of despair, and slowly said, Traveler stranded on a deserted island, your experience is really wonderful. In response, Klein could only use silence instead of answering. Lord, he is a member of the Night Watchman of the Church of the Night. I don't know how he drifted from Backland to this island. Mr. A briefly introduced him. Lord. A flash of lightning suddenly flashed through Klein's mind, followed by a roar of thunder, which made his hair stand on end and he stood stiffly in place. The only existence that Mr. A of the Aurora Society could call the Lord was the real creator. The mysterious person in front of him turned out to be the evil god known as the real creator. No wonder the Angel of Destiny Ouroboros and Mr. A were both on this ship. He had broken into the lair of the Aurora Society. Klein's mouth was dry and he couldn't say a word for a while. His already desperate mood completely fell into the bottomless abyss. But the death he was waiting for did not come as expected. Instead, he heard a sentence, take him. Follow the Lord's will. Klein's mind was full of question marks. Did the other party let him go so easily? The gift of destiny needs to be repaid in the future. The mysterious man who was suspected to be the real creator left the last sentence and left here. The gift of destiny? Klein's heart sank. Was this said to himself? Or to his future self? He always felt that when the other person looked at him, it was as if he was looking through the present self to another self that had not yet appeared. Although he didn't understand, it was always a good thing to be able to leave this deserted island. The Lord's gift will not be given a second time. Mr. A's voice was cold and stern, and he urged Klein to get on the boat and set rules for him. Before leaving the ship, he could only stay in the stern area and was not allowed to set foot in other places. Klein had no opinion on this. He was still thinking about what the mysterious man said just now. From the moment he saw him, it was as if he saw through his origins and future destiny. That feeling was like lying naked on the bed and letting others look down on him. Not even a hair could be hidden. Klein shook his head, shook off these thoughts, and turned to worry about Will's situation. The strength of the Angel of Destiny Ouroboros was definitely terrifying, and he didn't know if Will could avoid this disaster. Chapter 329 When Mr. Fool Draws the Fool Card Backland. It had been a long time since Will had entered Hastur's dream through the paper cranes. You started sleeping during the day. Did you encounter any emergency? Will was wearing an Intis-style casual outfit, and he looked a little taller than when Hastur left Backland. You're the one who's going to be in trouble. Hee, as long as you don't bother me, I won't have any trouble. Asta raised his eyebrows slightly. Yeah, then I won't bother you. I wish you good luck in the future. Wait. Will hurriedly stopped in front of Hastur, with a flattering smile on his face. We haven't contacted for a long time, so stay and chat for a few more words. Then let's talk about what new ice cream Backland has recently. Will sighed and said, I'm still a child, do you have to compete with me? Tisk, we're all old things who have lived for who knows how many years. Asta teased and told Will that Ouroboros was on his way to Backland, and specifically told him that Ouroboros was sure that he was hiding in Backland. Will frowned and complained, did you sell me to that stupid snake? Aren't you in touch with other people besides me? Asta didn't make it too clear. Alas, he is the one with a rough fate, how come it is implicated to me? Will's young face sighed like an 80-year-old man. I have to play hide and seek with that stupid snake again, so annoying. Seeing that Will didn't care much, Asta ended the dream. In the Hall of Stars, Asta began to think about how to deal with Klein. Now that Ouroboros is heading to Backland, it is a good opportunity to let Klein go. It's just that before letting him go, he can chat with him for a while and warn him so that he will be more careful in the future. If he didn't happen to meet me this time, Klein would either die at the hands of Ouroboros or Mr. A. If this is the case, I don't know whether the Lord of Mystery will wake up directly from Klein's body or put a new test subject from Saphiric Castle again. At night, the sky was full of stars. The waves that had been surging during the day had gradually subsided, and it was quiet and gentle. Klein sat at the stern, resisting hunger, holding a fishing rod and looking at the buoy on the sea. I don't know if it's the bait, but the fish just won't take the bait. If no more fish take the bait, he will have to go hungry for another day. Since boarding this ship, Mr. A has been guarding the cabin door every day to prevent him from sneaking in, and he also doesn't allow him to leave the stern and out of sight. At first, he thought it was a good thing, at least his life was a little guaranteed. But Mr. A ignored him, let alone preparing food for him. He didn't dare to go into the gray fog in front of Mr. A to ask Miss Justice to bring him delicious food. He could only carefully pick up the fishing rod next to him and try to maintain his basic food needs by fishing. But the fish just wouldn't take the bait. In his previous life, he often saw the fisherman's empty talk on some social networks, and he didn't expect that he would become a qualified airman one day. Mr. A, who was guarding the cabin door, opened and closed his eyes, glanced at Klein, and a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. People who can't survive with their own skills deserve to starve. During the time he was on the boat, he basically ate once every few days. He only needed some fish blood to maintain his daily consumption. Fishing was simple for him. He used his own meat as bait and could easily catch a big fish weighing more than 10 kilograms. They eat their own meat and drink their blood. This is fair. Plop. The sound of falling into the water came suddenly. Mr. A glanced at the stern again. Klein, who was still fishing, was gone at this moment. He didn't get up to look for him, nor did he care whether Klein escaped at this time. Stupid and incompetent people are not worth surviving. This sea area is listed as a restricted area that cannot be approached, and basically no ships will pass by. Wanting to leave by swimming is undoubtedly a way to death. After several minutes, the sound of something falling on the deck came from the stern. It was Klein who threw a 7 or 8 kilogram fish onto the deck while being wet all over. He took a deep breath, used the paper left on the deck as a knife, cut open the fish's belly, emptied out the liver and other things, rinsed it with seawater in the barrel, and then cut the fish into thin sashimi. Unfortunately, there was no mustard or soy sauce, so he had to make do with it. Klein sighed, glanced at Mr. A, who was still staring at this place, and turned his back to slowly enjoy his late dinner. Late at night, the cold wind on the sea was mixed with moisture, so that the clothes were not dry yet. Klein, who was curled up behind the mast, sneezed several times. In the battle with Mr. A, he was affected by the opponent's disease ability. His body was weak, and now with the sea breeze, his body could not hold on for long. His head was dizzy, his nose was blocked, and his whole body was cold and wet. He could only generate some heat by shaking his body muscles. His eyes unconsciously looked at the cabin that could shelter from the wind and rain, but even Mr. A could only guard outside the door, so he was not qualified to go in to rest, even though there were many rooms on the ship. After looking for a while, he shifted his gaze to the starry sky above his head. It was rare tonight that there were no dark clouds, and the stars in the sky were particularly bright. Even without the crimson moon, they could still illuminate the entire starry sky. In the starlight, the mysterious man seen during the day appeared again. Klein shuddered all over, and his mind immediately became much clearer. But he did not make a sound to disturb him. The starlight was bright but not dazzling, and it sprinkled on the man, holy and majestic. Evil God? The real creator? Can this really match? Klein sighed in his heart, and then immediately suppressed this idea. Everyone knows that this kind of evil god is the best at hiding his true appearance, and always appears in a more convincing and friendly image. The figure seemed to notice his gaze and slowly descended on the deck. Mr. A, who had been guarding outside the door, immediately became alert and came to the side, looking ready to be dispatched at any time. I have a deck of tarot cards here. Do you want to try your own fate? Asta said, and 22 tarot cards covered the front and floated in the air in a circle. No, I don't want to at all. Klein subconsciously wanted to refuse. He still remembered that when he first came to this world, he had done a tarot divination, and he drew the Fool card. Later, he did have endless struggles with the Fool card. If he drew the Fool card in front of this mysterious man, would he see that he was the mysterious fool? But when he met the mysterious man's eyes, Klein knew that he would definitely not escape this disaster tonight. He could only grit his teeth and get up, take a few steps closer, and bite the bullet, and Mr. A each drew a tarot card. Without any surprise, the card he drew was the Fool card. Klein's head was buzzing, and he unconsciously licked his dry lips, and his face instantly became much paler. This was in sharp contrast to Mr. A, who drew the Hanged Man card and was happy and excited. The Hanged Man, sacrifice and burden, you are a devout believer. Asta reaffirmed Mr. A's faith, which made Mr. A tremble with excitement. Then, Asta cast his eyes on Klein, who looked a little dazed, glanced at the Fool card in his hand, and said with a slight smile, "The Fool, a new beginning, a new journey." Klein's body was stiff, and every pore exuded a biting cold. I don't know if it was his illusion just now. When the other party read the word fool, it seemed that he paused deliberately before continuing. Could it be that he has seen through his hidden true identity? Want to escape. This is the only thought in Klein's mind at the moment, but he clearly understands that unless the other party lets him go, he will never be able to leave the ship. He could only force a smile and said, "It's a very good card, I like it very much." Asta didn't say anything else, put away the 22 tarot cards and disappeared. Let's stop here for the matter of stripping the vest. If we continue to talk about it, Klein probably feels like committing suicide. Let's leave Mr. Fool with one last fig leaf. Mr. A also left and continued to guard the cabin door. Klein walked back to his original position with his almost unconscious legs and sighed heavily. This was really exciting, and his little heart couldn't bear it. If it happened one or two more times, he felt that his heart would break because it couldn't bear the pressure. On the fourth day of Klein's life on the ship, his whole body became weaker and weaker, and rest and food were constantly destroying his body. That afternoon, a ship happened to pass by in the nearby sea. Klein's eyes suddenly lit up and he subconsciously glanced at Mr. A. The other party didn't kill him, and took him away from the deserted island. It should be intentional to help him. You must always remember that this is the Lord's gift to you. After saying that, Mr. A drove Klein off the ship and let him leave on the ship. Chapter 330 The Hanged Man's First Encounter with the World. Ahem, it has been 3 days since Klein was kicked off the ship by Mr. A and got back on this new ship. On the first day on board, his strong spirit finally reached its limit and he fell seriously ill. It was not until today that he got better. He looked at the self in the mirror who had obviously changed a lot and silently made a decision. He was going to start a new journey with a new identity. The old Klein needed a rest. At least he should not appear again in the short term. There were too many things that could not be explained, such as how did he survive the Bansi Port incident? The Lord of Storms descended and destroyed Bansi Port. There was no reason for him to survive. And what happened after he survived? He said that he was stranded on a deserted island and was rescued by Mr. A and the Angel of Fate Ouroboros. And he also met a mysterious person who was suspected to be the real creator. Not only did they not kill him, but they also let him go? Can such remarks really convince people? If he had not experienced it himself, he would not believe such a rhetoric that had so much to complain about. The most crucial point is that his identity is bound to attract enemies in the future, so it is better to sever ties with Benson and Melissa first, so as not to implicate them in the end. Klein's death is enough to leave them a generous death pension, so that their future days are guaranteed. If there is a chance in the future, I will go to Backland to visit them. Mr. World, Gehrman Sparrow, this is my new identity. Klein looked at himself in the mirror and murmured. In order to better play the new identity of Gehrman Sparrow, he needs to put on makeup for himself. The original handsome and bookish self is definitely not suitable. After making the decision, Klein felt much more relaxed. He couldn't help but think of what the mysterious man said that night after he drew the Fool card. Fool, a new beginning, a new journey. Is all this destined in the dark? Fate always makes people awe. Dong dong dong. The door was knocked. Klein rubbed his hair randomly, and then went to open the door. The man who came was the captain's deputy. He was very tall, nearly 2 meters tall. He said in a muffled voice. Our captain said that the sea does not support idle people. Your body has gradually recovered. We need to pay a little for the care during this period. This is our reasonable request. Klein nodded and smiled. I will pay enough. This is a small reward for kind people. The big guy heard a satisfactory answer and asked someone to send Klein another nourishing fish soup mixed with herbs on the spot. Klein has always been grateful to this ship and the captain and others. When he was seriously ill, they not only did not throw him into the sea to feed the fish, but also asked people to take care of him to recover. It was not until today that he mentioned this. This is a rare kind person. He dared to bet that if he unfortunately fell into the hands of Mr. Hanged Man, he would probably be sunk into the sea the next day after boarding the ship. Just as Klein was thinking, there was a panic sound outside, and the entire deck was shaking slightly. Klein didn't care that his body hadn't recovered yet, and hurried to a crowded place to see what was going on. It's pirates! Pirates are coming! The people on the ship were panicked. One of the most terrible things on the sea is encountering pirates, which is far more deadly than the raging waves.
Klein's heart sank, and he felt that his luck was really bad.
He just paused for a moment, then went to the captain's room and told the captain that he could also help fight the pirates. The captain patted him on the shoulder and said, "Very good, I didn't save the wrong person. Good people should get the rewards that match them." Klein expressed his attitude again, then left the captain's room, came to the deck outside, and looked at the pirate ships that were coming here with the sailors holding weapons.
"That's the Blue Avenger," someone in the crowd exclaimed, and there was fear on his face that could not be hidden.
This caused a certain commotion among the crowd. Klein found a sailor who knew the Blue Avenger and asked him about the origin of this pirate group. It is rumored that the Blue Avenger is a ghost ship. Once it falls into their hands, it will become a ghost driven by slavery forever, and even death cannot free it.
Klein looked much more solemn. Looking at the sailors who had little fighting spirit, he wondered whether he should try to sneak in and kill the captain of the Blue Avenger to resolve this disaster.
Just as he made up his mind and planned to do so, he suddenly caught a glimpse of the figure at the front of the Blue Avenger.
The man had deep facial features, rough contours, bronze skin, and dark blue hair that matched the sea very well. He did not look like a Loan, but more like a colonist in the violent sea area of the Daisy Bay.
Why does this man look like Mr. Hanged Man? The more Klein looked at the man, the more familiar he felt. He could easily match him with Mr. Hanged Man. He thought for a while, left the deck and went to the bathroom. He walked 4 steps in the opposite direction to the gray fog, and focused his eyes on the light spot where Mr. Hanged Man was, and saw the environment around him clearly. Klein was very sure that the captain of the Blue Avenger was Mr. Hanged Man. This made him feel relieved, and he could avoid bloodshed today. He just thought about the next path, and then returned to the real world. While there was no melee yet, he persuaded Mr. Hanged Man to leave.
Klein found the captain and said that he was sure to persuade the Blue Avenger to retreat, and asked the captain and others not to act rashly.
The captain looked at him doubtfully for a long time, and finally nodded to believe his promise. When he rescued people on the ship that day, he felt that the person in front of him was extraordinary. With the captain's trust, Klein boarded the Blue Avenger in the name of talking on behalf of the captain, and met Mr. Hanged Man with an indifferent and cold face.
Klein looked at him deeply, and said with a slight smile, "Captain, can we talk alone?"
"Let's talk here." Alger didn't give the man in front of him any face. "Okay." Klein sighed and said, "A person who accidentally fell on an uninhabited desert island was finally rescued and regained his freedom." Alger frowned slightly, feeling a little puzzled. Before that, that person needed to thank 2 people, one for feeding him various foods, and the other for teaching him how to survive on a desert island. This time, Alger finally understood what the man in front of him said. His pupils shrank slightly, and he said in disbelief, "Who are you?" "German Sparrow, some people also call me the World." Hearing this, Alger completely matched the man in front of him with the image of the World and the Tarot Club. This made him unbelievable. The World had only participated in the Tarot Club once, but he actually met it.
And it was when he allowed his men to rob merchant ships. Quote. Alger was silent for a while, told his men not to do anything reckless, and then led Klein to the captain's room for face-to-face communication. "Are you really the World? Mr. Hanged Man, I didn't expect to meet you at this time." Klein was also surprised by this matter. After his code name at the Tarot Club was revealed, Alger finally recognized Klein's identity in the World. "How did you recognize my identity?" "I am a believer of Mr. Fool." Klein gave the answer he had already thought of, so that Alger could believe that he had no ill intentions. Alger was stunned at first, and then he showed a sudden realization of relief. "Did Mr. Fool guide you to find me?"
"No, what happened today was a complete accident. It was the pull of fate."
The pull of fate. Alger's expression was moved. In this short moment, he thought about many things and turned to say, "Are you here to let me leave?"
"It was the captain of that ship who saved me. He is a very good person." Alger nodded, got up and went out, and told his crew to come back and let them go.
After solving this matter, Alger asked Klein where he was going next.
"I want to rest on your ship for a while," Klein said, and coughed heavily several times, and his face began to turn pale again. Alger frowned slightly, but still agreed, and immediately arranged a guest room for World German Sparrow to live in. Klein was still very relieved about Mr. Hanged Man. With Mr. Fool around, he would not harm him no matter what, and he was his temporary umbrella in the sea. He would leave after his body was fully recovered. During this time, he could also find Mr. Hanged Man to learn some survival skills on the sea. On Monday afternoon, Klein and Alger looked at each other tacitly, and then stayed in their own rooms. Klein came to the Grey Fog first, and after making the world, he took Alger and others to the Grey Fog to start this week's Tarot Club. Audrey looked at the world and said, "Congratulations to Mr. World for leaving the deserted island." She felt a little sorry for this in her heart. It felt good to feed him, just like feeding a larger Susie. Chapter 331 Pirate Hunter, Gairman Sparrow. Chapter 331 Pirate Hunter, Gairman Sparrow. The world nodded, expressed his gratitude to Miss Justice, and told everyone that he was now on the same ship with Mr. Hanged Man. Alger's eyes narrowed slightly, and many thoughts flashed through his mind, and finally settled on the idea that this was a threat, a means for Mr. World to protect himself. He told the Tarot Club this, and he would never leave him alone. Furs suddenly became interested, his eyes brightened, and he silently noted in his heart that the Tarot Club members had begun to meet in the real world and were actively planning big things. Audrey looked at the two of them with envy. She also wanted to meet the Tarot Club members in the real world, but unfortunately she never had the opportunity. The world didn't expect them to have so many tricks. He just wanted to tell everyone about his current situation so that they don't need to worry about it anymore. Mr. Fool, who sat in the first seat, said nothing and continued to follow the fixed process of the weekly Tarot Club. Until the end of the exchange, the world slowly spoke. "I met the Angel of Destiny Ouroboros on the sea. He should have arrived in Backland now." Klein still felt that he needed to remind the members of the Tarot Club to prevent them from accidentally exposing or bumping into the Angel of Destiny, so he said it through the mouth of the world. Mr. World actually met an angel. And it was the Angel of Destiny of the 8 angels under the ancient sun god. Audrey and Furs took a breath of cold air. They were in Backland and were the most likely to meet the Angel of Destiny. Mr. Moon, who never thought much about things, didn't care much about this matter. Such a big shot would not have any communication with him. Alger's pupils shrank. He was still wondering why the world was dragging a sick body. It turned out that he had encountered such an incident before. What was even more incredible was that he was still alive after seeing the Angel of Destiny. Was it because of the protection of Mr. Fool? He glanced at Mr. Fool imperceptibly and saw that he had a calm face and obviously didn't care about the matter of the Angel of Destiny. The most excited person was Little Sun. He said excitedly, he must know about the Creator. Klein naturally would not tell them the details. He only let the world say a few words and then stopped talking. "Let's stop here." After Mr. Fool ended the meeting and sent everyone away, he did not stay for long and returned to the real world. He opened the door and walked out. Coincidentally, Alger also opened the door at the same time. The two looked at each other tacitly and turned to talk about some hot topics on the sea. For example, the Storm Church suddenly rose up and killed the pirates who followed the uncrowned king to make trouble some time ago. At the same time, there was news that the Storm Lord, who was believed by the Storm Church, descended to Bansi Port and wiped out the uncrowned king in one fell swoop. Bansi Port was affected by the battle and was completely wiped out. Klein listened quietly and did not comment on these rumors. He was at the scene at that time and felt that the Storm Lord's descent was mainly aimed at Bansi Port. The uncrowned king might not have died. At that time, the space changed, and the influence of the illusory ancient city caused him to appear far away from Bansi Port. If he could survive, the uncrowned king should not die. After staying in the Blue Avenger for 5 days, Klein, who had recovered his health, said goodbye to Alger at a seaport and embarked on a journey that truly belonged to him. Panine Port. Because of the power of the Storm Church, Hasta cooperated with them during this period and cleared out several pirate groups, which brought rare peace and tranquility to the coast of Southwell County. During this period, under the pretext of assisting the Storm Church in clearing out the pirate groups, coupled with the public's call, he completely took over the remaining 5 important ports from the Grand Duke of Southwell County. At this point, Asta took over the power of the coastal defense line of Southwell County. At this time, Audrey's second brother Alfred visited again, indicating that he had made up his mind to stay in Southwell County to make achievements. Earl Hall also wrote a letter asking Asta to take better care of him. For the sake of the 100,000 gold pounds, Hastur let Alfred manage the internal affairs of one of the ports.
If he is really capable, Hastur does not mind giving him more opportunities.
It should be a bit difficult to surpass his elder brother in the title, but it will not be a problem to become a baron or viscount in the future. Hastur arranged not only Alfred, but also his own people in the important positions of the 8 ports. Who are loyal and useful can basically not be hidden from the investigation of the Yellow Monk organization. As long as Hastur is willing, it is no problem to arrange those people for their whole lives. Hastur also asked Keyes to arrange a little for the members of the Yellow Monk organization who want to become a small noble. There are not many people, only 6 people, and other members prefer to hide in the dark and follow the back of the Yellow King as taught by Lady Lisa. After finishing these things, Hastur decided to return to the castle for a short time and plan the issue of growing food. He no longer needs to worry too much about his land. What he needs to plan is the land of the villages and towns in the territory, and try to let them store more food. The war in the southern continent is coming to an end, and the power of the 7 Gods Church is being driven out continuously. This not only includes the alliance of various forces in the southern continent, but also secret organizations such as the Witch Sect, the Aurora Society, the Spiritual Cult, and even the Shadow of the Twilight Hermits. This looks more like a test of the Church of the 7 Gods. Hastur estimated that the war in the southern continent will end in about 2 months.
By that time, whether the southern continent will use troops against the Kingdom of Loen will be clear.
On the way back to the castle, when passing by the town, Hastur deliberately stayed here for one night to confirm that the previous events had no effect, and then he returned to the castle. During this period, the entire castle has been completely renovated. The castle, which is more than 200 years old, has been injected with new vitality and looks much younger.
Ashera likes the new home very much. She patrols every corner when she is free every day.
The most favorite thing to do is to hide in the shadows and watch the maids affected by the provocation ability quarrel with each other. In the room, Hastur and Sharon are reading the letter sent by Marriage. This is the first time Marriage has used the method of sending letters to convey information. The envelope clearly states that it is sent to Hastur.
Hastur, who roughly guessed the content of the letter, naturally invited Sharon to open the letter together.
As expected, most of the content of the letter was about how painful his life was in Backland and how many things he had to deal with every day. On the surface, he was complaining about how painful his daily life was, but in fact, he was complaining about Sharon leaving him alone in Backland. In the last 2 paragraphs of the letter, Marriage asked Hastur in a serious tone how he was getting along with Sharon recently. At the same time, he also revealed his idea of sneaking to South Wales. In response, Hastur criticized with a serious face. Marriage really needs to restrain his desires and must not let him leave Backland. Sharon nodded silently and agreed with this sentence. How can this Marriage ask about the progress of our relationship? He is really worrying about nothing. Hastur deliberately frowned and looked stern. Sharon just looked at him quietly without saying anything. How do you think I should answer his question? Hastur threw this question to Sharon, and he knew that Sharon would not answer such a question that deliberately teased her. Sharon looked at him for a while and then walked straight to the window, continuing to play the role of a puppet that didn't speak or move. Marriage, Miss Sharon somehow saw the letter you wrote. She was very angry and asked me to warn you not to think about leaving Backland. Actually, I deliberately invited Miss Sharon to read the letter you wrote. I didn't expect you to be smarter than I thought. You actually knew that you couldn't openly oppose and complain about Miss Sharon's arrangements in the letter.
It seems that the training during this period of time has really made your brain much better.
Asta was very casual in writing a reply to Marriage. He wrote whatever he wanted to make him angry. Anyway, Marriage was far away in Backland and had no chance to come here to settle accounts with him. Speaking of which, he also wanted to temper Marriage's character and let him learn to restrain his emotions that were about to get out of control. Really well-intentioned. May 25th. It has been nearly half a year since Asta left Backland and came to South Wales.
He successfully digested the corrupted Baron potion in his body last night.
It was a clear and obvious feeling. It took half a year to completely digest the corrupted Baron potion, which was much faster than the average Beander. But it was still a little slower than Klein in the original book. Asta had been hearing news from the sea during this period of time. It was said that a new pirate hunter had emerged on the sea recently, and his name was Gehrman Sparrow.
When he heard the news, Hasta knew that Klein should be promoted to Sequence 6 Faceless Man.
Only by successfully being promoted to Faceless Man could Klein hunt many pirates as Gehrman Sparrow. Fortunately, the Sequence 5 Chaos Mentor potion he needed was already prepared. Once he adjusted his condition, he could be promoted to Sequence 5, still ahead of Klein. Chapter 332. Genie. The fool was never born, I should hurry up too. In the study, Hastur held Azishara and looked in the direction of Backland. In addition to the necessary potions, a ritual is also required to advance to Sequence 5 Chaos Mentor. For example, when Klein was promoted to Master of Secret Puppetry, he needed to take the potion in the Singing of the Mermaid, and he also needed a corresponding ritual. You need to go to a place where order and chaos are more dense, and take the potion under the gaze and approval of many people. Backland is the best place. Early before he had completely digested the potion, he had already written several letters back to Backland, one of which was to King Rune. The content was roughly, I have been away from Backland for half a year, and I miss Backland's life very much. I also need to report to the king about the latest crackdown on pirates and coastline defense. The other letters, one to Earl Hall's family, one to Greg, asking them to help with the operation so that I can return to Backland earlier. The other letters were to Susie, Audrey, Professor Wayne, Butler Neal and others. Calculating the time, the reply from Backland should be on the way. If the king does not allow him to return to Backland, then he can only go back secretly. But in this way, it will be more difficult for him to be promoted to Chaos Mentor. Being recognized by the order represented by King Rune and recognized by the people under the rule of order can help him resist the huge chaos caused by the promotion of Chaos Mentor. Otherwise, it is easy to become mentally ill, and in a worse situation, he will directly lose his mind and become an out-and-out monster. Meow. Don't you want to go back? Meow. Do you know the hardship of traveling? Ashera buried in Hastur's arms and did not speak. It was just lazy. Moving was too troublesome. And while the owner was not at home, it could just eat more dried fish, it was almost starving recently. After only 2 days of waiting, Backland's letter was finally sent here. Hastur had already packed up and set off to return to Backland the next day after reading the letter. Sharon did not come back with him, but stayed in the castle to accompany Azishara. In her words, it is easier to play the role of a dusty puppet in the castle. June 1st. The steam train from South Wales to Backland was whirring forward. In the luxurious single room, Hastur was lying on the bed and entered the Hall of Stars. The lamp god seemed to be in a good mood, probably because he had been getting along well with Bernadette during this period. He followed the advice of the stars and made fewer troubles, and instead provided serious help to Bernadette. Although he was still on guard, he could still speak a few words occasionally. The Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Overlord seemed to be taciturn, probably still worried about the affairs of the believers such as the god of Ea. As soon as the High Dimension Overlooker arrived, he attracted the attention of the Lamp God. He taunted, "It's surprising that you would suffer at the hands of the Lord of Storms. Is your mouth finally going to work?" The words of the High Dimension Overlooker were very sharp, causing the Lamp God to snort and stop talking. The Mother Tree of Desire looked over, "Based on your style of doing things, there should be something hidden in the incident in Bansi Port that we don't know about." Smart. The High Dimensional Overlooker smiled and said, "Your brain is much more useful than some guys, unlike their brains which are just an empty decoration. Hee hee, you were still beaten up by the Lord of Storms, and even the pirate group following you was almost wiped out by the Church of Storms." The Jinn couldn't stand the ridicule of the High Dimensional Overlooker. The High Dimensional Overlooker glanced at the Jinn and said calmly, "I sense the breath of the City of Disaster." What? The Jinn was instantly excited, and his tone was inevitably raised a little. The City of Disaster appeared, so would his country of disorder also reappear. The Mother Tree of Desire's eyes also became a little more eager, and he was also very concerned about the whereabouts of his own source shadow world. Only the complete Superstar Overlord said in confusion, "Except for God's Chaos Sea and Tianan's source castle, other source substances are sealed in the Western continent. It is not time to unseal them yet." The High Dimension Overlooker deliberately put on a high profile and stopped discussing matters related to the City of Disaster. Instead, he discussed the past deeds of God and Tianzun with the Superstar Overlord. This made the lamp god, who wanted to hear the following, very angry, but he knew that this was the high dimension overlooker deliberately provoking him in order to make him submit. There was no way, he could only submit temporarily, and whispered to the high dimension overlooker what happened in Bansi Port. The happy high dimension overlooker slowly said, Bansi Port was affected by the power of the City of Disaster, but unfortunately it was wiped out in time by the Lord of Storms. Then what? Then Bansi Port disappeared, and the influence and traces of the City of Disaster were completely wiped out. Only like this? The lamp god suppressed his anger. What else do you want to hear? The seal has not been lifted yet. This is just a little power leaking out of the City of Disaster. The lamp god, who did not hear what he was concerned about, snorted coldly, and his originally good mood was completely ruined. The high-dimensional overlooker tutted his mouth, as if to say that you are useless. If you can find the cracks of the power leaking out of the state of disorder, you may be able to get rid of the seal of the wishing lamp without returning to the starry sky. Hearing this, the lamp god was moved and said with hope, have you found that place? No. The decisive answer of the high-dimension overlooker poured a basin of water on the burning heart of the lamp god. Hasta also poured a basin of cold water. Not all sealed source substances can seep out through the cracks. The heart of the lamp god was completely beaten to the bottom of the valley. After all, he could only take the road of returning to the starry sky. After revealing this matter, the Mother Tree of Desire talked about the new movements of the Seven Gods Church during this period. If it weren't for the reminder of the high dimension overlooker last time, his few remaining believers would have been wrapped up. In the matter of hunting down the Rose School, the Seven Gods Church was particularly united. The last time almost triggered the descent of the Goddess of Night and the God of Steam Machinery. Fortunately, they avoided it in advance and did not cause a big mess. The high dimension overlooker smiled and said, they have begun to pay attention to us, but their main focus is still on the Fool and the stars. As he said, his eyes fell on Hasta, but he didn't say anything. The most worthy target of the Seven Gods Church now is the Rose School, which is influenced by the Mother Tree of Desire and the Superstar Overlord, but what really worries the Seven Gods Church is the hidden stars and the Fool. His information has always been well informed. Unless it is at the level of the Seven Gods Oracle, he can peek at other information as long as he wants. Hasta said calmly, don't worry. The lamp god said with a little doubt, which organization is the Fool? The high-dimensional overlooker glanced at him strangely, it seems that you are locked up very tightly. The lamp god was about to refute, but soon figured it out, as the Fool related to the mystery. The mystery is the old days of the three paths, and the Fool is just a sequence 0 of one of the extraordinary paths, which made him not connect the two for a while. Think about it carefully, there has not been a sequence 0 in the three paths of mystery for so many years, and the only one who is closer to the true God, Mr. Men, has also fallen into the hands of the fallen Mother Goddess. He has always believed that it is the existence of God that suppresses the awakening of the mystery. Even giving birth to Amen, a son, is to hinder the awakening of the mystery. So Amen has not yet been promoted to sequence 0. The jinn thought carefully again and said, has the Fool been born? Is the half-fool of the Antigonus family still alive? The jinn leaned back in his chair, shouldn't you be the one who knows the most about the secrets? Hey, there is no fool now. This time the jinn was very sure, he was sure that the half-fool was still alive. And as long as he was alive, the Fool would not appear. The Seven Gods Church understood this truth better than him, after all, it was the work of the Goddess of Night. Then, there was only one reason left. The so-called Fool is the secret. The jinn sneered, he finally appeared, I thought he would never wake up again. Tisk. What can you do when you are trapped in the wishing lamp? The high-dimensional overlooker made a joke, and the jinn fell silent again. Since Bernadette was promoted to sequence 2, her control over the wishing lamp has become much stronger, and she can no longer sense what is happening in the outside world as clearly as before. Even when Gimi resurrected as the Fool, he didn't notice it at the first time. This was a big blow to him who had always wanted to compete with Gimi again. Especially when he thought that Gimi was waking up step by step, while he could only be trapped in the wishing lamp, his mood became more complicated. He couldn't help but look at Hasta with a resentful look. If the stars were willing to help, he could already return to the starry sky. Before the end of the world, you can naturally return to the starry sky.
Facing the eyes of the lamp god, Hastur could only repeat his future again.
This was the first time that Hastur predicted the future of the lamp god in front of them, and immediately attracted the attention of the Mother Tree of Desire, the Superstar Lord, and the High Dimension Overlooker. The Superstar Lord sneered, "It's a pity." The High Dimension Overlooker nodded, saying, "In this matter, I rarely feel the same as you." Facing their ridicule, the lamp god's mood improved a lot.
Chapter 333 This is the Blessing of the Stars. Backland, the home of Earl Hall. Audrey was in a good mood. Counting the time, she had not seen Mr. Hastur for almost half a year, and they only exchanged letters. "Susie, you seem to be in a good mood. Audrey, you are in a good mood too."
Audrey raised her head slightly. "Susie, I specifically told Mr. Hastur in the letter that he must not bring you any of Russell's works. Reading too many of those books will not be good for you." Susie was silent for a while, then looked at Audrey with a calm face. "Audrey, I have read all the works of Emperor Russell."
This time it was Audrey's turn to fall silent. After a while, she asked, "When did you finish reading?"
"A month ago." Audrey and Susie looked at each other for a few times, and then Audrey said with emotion, "Susie, you are getting smarter and smarter now. Reading can increase wisdom, and the book also says so, Wong." Audrey sighed heavily. She missed the silly Susie from before. Boom, boom, boom. There was a knock on the door, and without Audrey's instructions, Susie immediately shut up, then found a shady place and lay down on the ground, closing her eyes and pretending to sleep.
Audrey opened the door, and the maid outside the door came to tell her that Earl Hall had something to ask her to go to the study. Susie, who was lying on the ground, moved her ears, got up and followed Audrey to the study.
In the study, Earl Hall was rubbing the corners of his eyes. "Dear Earl Hall, did you come to me to help you relieve your fatigue?" Audrey smiled and came behind Earl Hall, reaching out to massage his shoulders. Earl Hall closed his eyes slightly and spoke after almost resting. "You should know that Hastur is returning to Backland, right? Well, will the second brother come back too? If he doesn't come back, he has always had a rift with your eldest brother. It would be better to stay in South Wales." Audrey was a little lucky that she was a girl, otherwise this kind of internal fight among the nobles would have affected her. Even if she didn't have that idea, it would have aroused the suspicion of her relatives. "The Queen has asked about you many times recently." Audrey's little hand massaging Earl Hall's shoulder paused. Susie, who was lying in the shadow of the bookshelf, couldn't help but pricked up her ears and listened more carefully. Earl Hall chuckled and said, "It seems that you already know the Queen's thoughts. Who makes my daughter the most dazzling pearl in Backland?" Audrey withdrew her massaging hands, frowned in distress, and finally pursed her thin lips slightly and said, "I don't like the life of the royal family." Earl Hall naturally understands his precious daughter's thoughts. He also doesn't really want to be related to the royal family. There are too many rules and it's too chaotic. He has not yet reached the point where he needs to sell his daughter to maintain his title. Therefore, he has always tried his best to deal with these things and refuse them. But recently, the Queen seems to be particularly interested in Audrey, and she doesn't know which prince has been thinking about her. Audrey was obviously just an adult, so she shouldn't have acted so eagerly. "Don't worry, I will help you block these messy things. My daughter is so good, so naturally she should make her own life choices with her own ideas instead of being chosen by others." Earl Hall comforted him with a gentle yet firm tone. Audrey nodded heavily, a smile slowly blooming on her troubled face. Woof. Susie also barked at the right time, showing that she was firmly on Audrey's side. The residence of 4C and Zio. After finishing writing for an hour, 4C lay down on the sofa to rest for 2 hours, with a rare sad look on his face. Recently, for some unknown reason, many extraordinary people began to investigate the followers of the stars, which made her afraid to go out and even unable to concentrate on writing. She also looked to the stars for a solution, and the stars just said that the stars would bless every believer. This made her think about whether to develop Zio into a believer in the stars. With the blessing of the stars, Zio would be much safer wandering around outside. Bang! Bang! Suddenly there was a sound of violent slamming on the door, which made 4C's heart skip a beat on the sofa. Could there be an extraordinary person coming to your door? She looked solemn, touched the bracelet on her wrist, took a deep breath, then stood up and came to the door. "Who's knocking outside?" "It's me, little Jerry." A familiar childish voice came from outside the door, which made Forsy relax a little. Little Jerry is a 7-year-old kid who lives on the street next door. He has a good relationship with Zio and is the youngest intelligence agent under Zio. Most of the time, children are less noticeable and are more suitable for gathering intelligence. "Are you alone?" Forsy was still a little worried. "Yes, someone asked me to send you a note." Squeaking, the old door made a dull sound due to its age. Forsy opened the door anyway, and there was indeed only little Jerry outside. Little Jerry placed a crumpled piece of paper in her palm, looked anxious and spoke quickly. "Sister Zio may be in danger." "Stop." Forsy hurriedly spread out the note, which read, "If you want your friends to be safe, come to the warehouse at number 32 Taze Street." Hugh was kidnapped? Or is this just a simple prank? Fors's face turned pale, and she held the note tightly and asked little Jerry about the details of what happened. "When I was looking for Sister Shu on the street, I was suddenly targeted. A tall and thin man with a scar on his right cheek came over, handed me this note, and asked me to pass it on to you with a fierce look on his face." After listening to little Jerry's description, Fors told him not to worry too much and promised that he would find Shu back. If she guessed correctly, the other party must be targeting the believers of the stars. Many wild extraordinary people have been targeted during this period. Shu has been wandering outside, and no matter how careful she is, she will be targeted one day. Let little Jerry leave first. Fors closed the doors and windows and returned to her bedroom. She briefly reported the situation to the stars. After getting a word of understanding, she felt relieved to take the triangular spike that Shu left at home and go out. The warehouse at number 32 Taze Street is located in a remote area. There is no other debris around except a pile of garbage. In the warehouse, Shu was tied to a pillar, his face was pale, and his eyes were full of worry. During this period, some people were frantically looking for believers of the stars. She was lucky and thought nothing would happen. Today, she was targeted and captured just after leaving a secret party. These people collected detailed intelligence, and even knew that Fors lived with her. They set up a plan to use her as bait to trick Fors here. She didn't want Fors to come here to save her at all. If she guessed correctly, Fors was the believer of the stars that these people had been looking for. But Fors still came. When Zio raised her eyes and saw Fors appear at the door of the warehouse, she couldn't help but redden her eyes and shouted, "Fors, you fool! You fell for such an obvious trap. Don't you know to hide, and then wait for an opportunity to find someone to save me?" Fors smiled and said, "I'm afraid that if I don't come, there will be no future." She knew very well that if she didn't show up, Zio would definitely have no way to survive. As for whether Zio could be rescued today, she could only put all her hopes on the blessing of the stars. There were 3 people guarding Hugh, one of whom was the tall, thin man with a scar on his face as described by little Jerry. "Your friend has only one chance to survive." Someone held a sharp dagger against Hugh's smooth throat. Fors tried to keep himself calm. "What do you want? Are you a believer of the stars?" This voice seemed to come from his mind, full of majesty that did not allow any concealment. Yes. Fors felt his mind was in chaos, and he blurted out that he was a believer of the stars. But before the 3 people could be happy, vines suddenly sprang out from deep underground and pierced through the 3 of them from the soles of their feet to their heads. Their bodies were hung on the green vines as thick as their wrists, and blood dripped down the vines, mixed into the soil and absorbed by the roots of the vines. The tied-up Zio was stunned and couldn't help but say, "Fors, when did you become so powerful?" Fors forced a smile at Zio, staggered, and hurriedly held the doorframe of the warehouse door and retched. The way of death directly stabbed by vines was too exciting, and she couldn't accept it for a while. After recovering a little, Fors bowed to the vines and said respectfully, "Thank you for your help." In fact, she didn't know who saved her in secret. Her intuition told her that this was the blessing of the stars. "Leave, be careful next time." An intellectual and pleasant voice came from the dark, and several vines emerged from the ground again, completely eating the 3 corpses until they were completely eaten, without even a drop of blood left. "I will be careful." Fors didn't wait for a reply. She was silent for a while, then ran to Zio's side, took out the 3-edged thorn and cut the rope on her wrist. "Wow, Fors, when did you know such a powerful person?" Zio, who regained his freedom, spoke exaggeratedly. Furs knew that Zio was deliberately changing the subject to prevent herself from blaming herself too much for what happened today. She smiled brightly and said proudly, "This is the blessing of the stars." It is indeed the blessing of the stars. Bernadette left quietly in the dark, and did not choose to meet Furs, who was also a believer of the stars, because there was no point. After finishing the sea affairs, she came to Backland to relax and play. Just then, she received a prayer picture from the stars, so she went there to solve the matter. She also heard that someone in Backland had been secretly tracking down the believers of the stars. She did not need to wait for the stars to tell her to start investigating the people or organizations behind the scenes. In addition to the Church of the Seven Gods, there is also a family that has been almost forgotten by history. The Abraham family. In order to find the believers of the stars, they became crazy, which was in stark contrast to the impression of hiding their identities. She wanted to investigate the problems here, and at the same time, she wanted to establish her authority and crack down on those organizations that were looking for believers of the stars. After Bernadette left, Furs also left Warehouse 32 with Hugh. On the way, Zio said seriously, "We need to move. Our place of residence has been exposed. If we continue to live here, we will definitely attract more people who are looking for believers of the stars. I'm sorry, I have implicated you. Hee, I'm glad to know, so you will be responsible for dinner today." Furs laughed and said that this matter would be left to her to solve. The dinner was easy to handle, but finding a suitable new house was not so easy. The two of them secretly went back home and took away all the money and valuables at home. In order to avoid trouble, they did not ask the landlord to return the rent. It was £2.08. The two of them put on different makeup than usual to avoid being easily recognized. "How about we go to Miss Audrey for help?" "No, our current situation is too dangerous. What if Miss Audrey is implicated?" "Okay, then what do you say? Let's go to St. Samuel Church and find a place to stay temporarily." Furs made a decision. This was a little trick of refuge that Hasta had told them. If you encounter any extraordinary events that cannot be solved, then stay near the Church of St. Samuel first, which can generally ensure safety. "I heard from Grellant that Mr. Hester will return to Backland soon. Let's go to him to give us some advice." Okay. Having made a decision, Furs and Hugh decided to spend some money and take a carriage to the Church of St. Samuel. At night, Furs was in the new room, closed the doors and windows, and began to pray devoutly to the stars. The familiar starry sky unfolded little by little from the ceiling, and Furs's confusion and anxieties slowly calmed down. "Thanks to the blessing of the stars, my friend and I escaped this disaster." Furs first thanked, and then said uneasily, "My friend also wants to believe in the stars, is it okay? The stars will not reject every devout believer." Furs' face was happy, and then hurriedly said, "She is outside now, can I let her in?" Yes. In the Hall of Stars, Hasta did not care about having another Hugh. Now that Furs's identity has been exposed, given her relationship with Zio, Zio will definitely be considered a believer of the stars. Outside the door, Zio took several deep breaths before she mustered up the courage to follow Furs in. Looking at the dreamy room in front of her, which was shrouded by the brilliant starry sky, Zio's eyes flashed with obsession. She stared at it for a long time before she hurriedly lowered her head and returned to her initial uneasiness. At first impression, she had already recognized the mysterious existence of the stars. Moreover, Furs had believed in the stars for so long and had not encountered any ominous things, which showed that the stars were a friendly god who was kind to people, not a terrible existence of evil gods. The uneasiness in her heart gradually subsided, and then, at Furs's urging, she offered her faith to the stars. A piece of starlight descended from the illusory and mysterious Hall of Stars, evenly covering an inch of Zio's skin. This is to use the power of the stars to cover up her fate and give her a certain degree of secret ability, so that Shu is not easily found by people through divination and other means. Although Furs and Shu escaped today, those who hide deeper will also infer from what happened today that Furs and Shu are believers of the stars. Necessary secret protection is necessary, after all, they are far inferior to Bernadette. After doing all this, Hasta dispersed the starry sky and ended this conversation. In the Hall of Stars, Hasta heard another report from Bernadette. According to Bernadette's investigation during this period, the Abraham family where Mr. Men belongs actively participated in the search for believers of the stars.
It turned out that the fallen mother goddess was behind it. Hasta immediately thought that this was the work of the fallen mother goddess. Now the fallen mother goddess's infiltration and influence on the Abraham family is getting bigger and bigger. It is estimated that most of the Abraham family has been polluted and become believers of the fallen mother goddess. Haster's eyes swept towards the star where the fallen mother goddess was. It was dark and he could not see the fallen mother goddess at all, nor could he know the specific situation of Mr. Men at the moment. But thinking about it, the fallen mother goddess must have taken some extreme measures to break through Mr. Men's blockade with her power, indirectly affecting and polluting the entire Abraham family. Haster asked Bernadette to continue investigating, and at the same time asked her to be careful of the fallen mother goddess. If it is difficult to deal with the fallen mother goddess, Bernadette should choose to cooperate with the Seven Gods Church, just like she did with the Rose School before. The next day, just after dawn, the steam train from South Wiltshire successfully arrived in Backland. When Hasta and 2 followers got off the steam train, the people sent by Butler Neal to guard here rushed to wait for orders as soon as possible. Because they could not calculate when the steam train would arrive, they had been waiting at the station for 3 days. This made Hasta very satisfied with Butler Neal's attitude. All the way back to the home in Queens by carriage, just after drinking a sip of hot tea and listening to Butler Neal reporting what happened during this period, Greg came to visit. "You are really well informed." Hasta smiled, got up and went to the door to greet Greg. A long-lost hug, Greg looked Hasta up and down, and said with emotion, "Hasta, you seem to have grown a lot taller after not seeing you for half a year. The water and soil in South Wiltshire are not bad, it is more nourishing," Hasta replied with a smile. After inviting Greg to sit down, the two chatted about their experiences during this period. After chatting, Greg gave Hasta a look. Hasta understood and invited him to the study on the second floor to talk. "Hasta, I have heard about your affairs in Southville County, but you have to be careful of the Grand Duke of Southville. He has a lot of complaints about you." Hasta raised his eyebrows and asked, "Is it the former or the current one?" "This is Backland." Greg lowered his voice and said, "He thinks you are too ambitious. You can use it but not always." This is what he said. Hasta's face was also a little solemn, and he listened more seriously. "This time the king allowed you to come back, and he might have wanted to take the opportunity to knock you. I will only be back for a week and then leave." Hasta told Greg not to worry about this matter. He did not do anything that violated the laws of Loan. Instead, he was conscientious in clearing out pirates, and even the current Grand Duke of Southville could not find any handle on him. Hasta turned to ask about Greg's current situation. "I'm still young, and most of the family's resources are concentrated in my uncle's hands. It's neither good nor bad. It's easy for me to be an idle noble." Hearing Greg say this, Hasta knew that his position in the Negan family was very awkward. Having a prime minister who is his uncle and is deeply trusted by the king, anyone with a discerning eye knows which side to bet on. However, being young and long-lived is also an advantage, and there will always be a time for the old and the new to take over. Greg didn't stay too long, and left after talking about business. At 10 o'clock in the evening, Hasta changed into a more casual outfit and came to the Brave Bar. Marich had been waiting for him in the billiard room. When he saw Hasta coming, he snorted coldly, "Look, isn't this Earl Hasta Campbell? How come he suddenly came back from the gentle land of South Wales?" "Tisk, Marich, your level of yin and yang needs to be improved." Hasta sat opposite Marich with a smile, and said, "Sharon asked me to tell you a message. No matter who you are in front of, you must learn to restrain yourself. Whether it is close or hateful, the emotions released are like water that has been poured out, and you can never take them back." At first Marich listened carefully, but then he said coldly, "When did Sharon become so talkative?" "Oh, I just helped Sharon describe what she wants to say in detail." Marich snorted lightly, and then became expressionless and kept strangers away. Hasta didn't care at all. He took out a bottle of red wine brought back from South Wales and poured a glass for himself and Marich. "How does it taste?" "Not bad. Why do I feel that the taste has deteriorated? I'd better take it back and throw it away." Marici took the bottle of red wine first. "People like me can only drink this kind of wine." Hasta smiled and talked to Marici about what Backland needs to pay attention to during this period. According to Marici, the most popular things in Backland at present are the stars and the Fool.
This is the same as what the high-dimensional overlooker said. Chapter 335. Using one's body as a door. Asta came out of the Brave Bar around 1 in the night. Asta hadn't seen Marich for a long time, and he drank a little more without realizing it. He originally wanted the Brave Bar to prepare a carriage for him to go back, but he sensed a familiar breath and finally chose to walk back. He walked along the street, through an alley, and came to the riverside. A green vine grew from the ground. Asta stretched out his hand and put it on the vine. The whole person followed the growth of the vine and came to the clouds. Asta chuckled and said, "You haven't rested yet so late. Are you appreciating the moonlight in Backland, or are you waiting for me here? Are you interested in investigating the Abraham family?" Today, Bernadette was wearing a pair of red high heels and a burgundy dress that went over her knees. She looked a little taller than usual, with a little more intellectual charm. Now, rats hiding in the dark always like to come out in the middle of the night to hunt. Asta looked down at Backland below and said thoughtfully, "They want to trouble Furs again. Do you know that little girl? It was me who helped her become a believer of the stars." "Then let's go." Bernadette didn't say any more nonsense. She casually opened a door and led Asta through it, and came to a street in the northern district. The two of them walked instead and walked towards the St. Samuel Church. Asta asked curiously, "Are they hiding near the St. Samuel Church?" This is a very smart choice. Asta was also quite relieved about this. Although Furs was a little lazy, she still had some use at the critical moment. They dared to take action near the St. Samuel Church. They are really brave. Bernadette's mouth was a little cold. After all, the extraordinary path they inherited is best at escaping. Asta thought it was right. As long as they were quick, with a traveler present, even a Sequence 4 demigod would not be able to catch up with them. 800 meters west of St. Samuel's Church, in a room at the end of the second floor of a hotel, Furs and Zio were lying on the same bed. Even though this place was very close to St. Samuel's Church, they were still worried about their safety tonight. Those people were like poison on the tarsal bones. Once they were attached, they could only get rid of them by digging out the flesh and scraping the bones. Furs stroked the bracelet on her wrist with one hand and held Zio's right hand with the other hand. If there was any movement, she would take Zio away from here immediately. In the dark room, only the light of the crimson moon outside the window was faintly illuminated. "Shoo, are you shaking?" I'm not. I just want to go to the bathroom." Zio blushed. "Keep it up. Furs, don't you feel anything in your stomach?" "Shoo, you drank too much water." Shu blushed and was embarrassed to speak. "I drink more water when I'm nervous." The two chatted quietly, and at this moment, the air around them solidified instantly. A loud chanting sounded. "I came, I saw, I recorded, this place is forbidden." Before the sentence was finished, Furs activated the bracelet on her wrist and took her and Shu away from the bed instantly. Click. A mysterious stone on the bracelet cracked. Furs had already brought Shu to the street about 100 meters away from St. Samuel's Church. "Let's go." Seeing where she was, Furs' face was happy, and she took Shu's hand and wanted to run to St. Samuel's Church. But the street in front of her suddenly twisted and changed, and in a blink of an eye it became an increasingly narrow dark path, and the only light left at the entrance was disappearing. Furs and Shu didn't have time to run out, and they were completely trapped in this dark world. A sound of footsteps came from behind them, from the darkness and silence. Furs fiddled with the mysterious bracelet on her wrist, but this time, the bracelet lost the ability to travel through space. The biggest escape reliance failed. Furs and Shu's faces turned pale instantly, their bodies trembled slightly, and their backs leaned together, and they could only keep asking the stars for help in their hearts. "I didn't expect to get extra gains." A male voice that was not bad came from in front of Furs. "Who are you? Didn't the person who introduced you to the extraordinary world tell you about our family?" After a reply, the dark world became a little brighter, and Furs and Shu could barely see the outline of the person who came, but couldn't see his appearance clearly. "What family?" Furs trembled and spoke. "Abraham, a family destined to be glorious." The visitor was very proud, and his voice could not help but rise a lot. Black tentacles came from all directions, tightly binding Furs and Zio. "You want to delay time through dialogue, naive." At this time, a ray of light bloomed, falling from above, tearing the dark world in front of him, and countless black tentacles turned into ashes in an instant. "Hee hee." The man just sneered at this, and wanted to leave here by teleporting, but he couldn't do it smoothly. His face, which had always been confident of winning, finally showed a little panic.
To deal with people like you, the first step is to prohibit your ability to teleport freely. A familiar voice came, and Fur's and Zio's hearts moved at the same time.
Why does this voice sound like Mr. Hastur? Has he returned to Backland? Mr. Hastur? Furs tried to speak carefully. Asta? A strange and cruel smile appeared on the man's face, and he said sinisterly, I finally waited for you. As soon as the words fell, he knelt on one knee on the ground, stretched out his right hand and inserted it into his chest, and the blood in his heart spurted out, forming a bright red and mysterious pattern on the ground. It was like a layer of illusory portals, and behind the portals it seemed that a powerful and mysterious existence had awakened and approached, trying to use this portal to pass through. When his breath spread, the whole space made a sound of being overwhelmed and shattered. Furs and Zio were overwhelmed by this breath, and their throats seemed to be strangled and they were about to suffocate. Suddenly, they felt something entangled around their waists, and then a huge force came, and they were both pulled away from here at the same time. It's really entangled, it's a pity that your brain is a little bit not working. A slightly contemptuous voice came out, and the world in front of them changed. The man kneeling on the ground, using his body as a portal, was shocked to find that he was right in front of the St. Samuel Church, and there was no one else around. Ah! The gradually widening portal first swallowed his body and sucked his blood, and then was easily suppressed by the St. Samuel Church in front of him. 800 meters away from the St. Samuel Church, Furs and Hugh returned to the hotel room where they lived, as if nothing had happened just now. Hugh, pinch my face to see if I am dreaming. Hugh, who was also still in shock, pinched Furs's face hard, and Furs hurriedly shouted to stop in pain. It's not a dream, but did those things really happen just now? I don't know, I always feel like I had a dream. Furs looked down at the bracelet on her wrist, and one of the stones on it was missing. She murmured, just think of it as a dream. On the cloud, Hastur looked down at the divine power left in the St. Samuel Church with a solemn expression, suppressing the Sequence 5 Traveler of Abraham. Fortunately, he had made a plan in advance and directed the matter to the Church of the Goddess of Night. Otherwise, if he were alone, he might have really capsized in the gutter. From what happened tonight, it can be seen that the fallen Mother Goddess has already deeply polluted the Abraham family. Every member of the Abraham family may become the gateway for the fallen Mother Goddess to descend. They seemed to be coming specifically for him. Once they sensed his breath, they would use their bodies as a gateway at all costs to guide the power of the fallen Mother Goddess to descend. He wants to deal with the stars by targeting the believers of the stars. This is Bernadette's judgment based on what happened tonight. Chapter 336 The Contaminated Furs. Do you think what happened tonight was resolved too easily? Hastur still had many doubts about what happened tonight. Since the fallen Mother Goddess has already polluted the Abraham family, there must be more than one Sequence 5 available. Moreover, would a Sequence 5 traveler dare to look for believers of the stars so recklessly in Backland? For the time being, I have only found this one person from the Abraham family. Bernadette looked down at the St. Samuel Church. The higher the sequence of the Beander, the more careful you have to be in Backland. Even if I want to find someone, it will take a lot of time. Asta nodded and casually asked about the Angel of Fate Ouroboros. I didn't sense his breath. For such an existence, only the gods can know his movements unless he wants to. It's late at night, and I should go back to rest. Asta naturally asked Bernadette to send him off. Under the clouds, St. Samuel Church. Archbishop Anthony's face was solemn. The filthy breath dared to appear in front of the gate of St. Samuel Church so openly. This was a provocation. He quickly summoned a Red Gloves team and asked them to search the nearby area overnight. No filth was allowed to exist. Leonard was also among those who were recruited. There was no extra expression on his face, and he had no intention of exploring what happened tonight. As the old man said, it was useless to ask more questions about things that could not be changed. Instead, the old man suddenly said in his heart, has the Abraham family fallen to this extent? Leonard was curious, but still did not ask about the Abraham family. Yes, it seems that the fall of Klein has made you completely mature. Leonard said calmly, I just don't want to focus on too many useless things. The next day, around 10 o'clock, Asta took a carriage to Sodric Palace to meet George III. This time, Earl Hall was not there, leaving him alone with George III. Asta tried to be more restrained to show his awe of the king, and this attitude made George III very satisfied. "What you did in Southville has been reported back to Backland. You did a good job against pirates. Those disgusting and dirty bastards should be hanged on the gallows and die with wailing."
George III said rude words with a warm face, walked over and patted Asta on the shoulder. "You are very much like the former Grand Duke of Southville. If you have time, you can go to him to ask for advice on pirates. Sometimes listening to the opinions of elders can help you avoid many detours."
Asta naturally heard the meaning of the words. Before leaving, George III asked him to attend the royal dinner tonight. For this arrangement, he naturally had no reason to refuse. After finishing the meeting with George III and coming to the outside of Sodric Palace, Asta did not get on the carriage and leave immediately, but silently felt the cold order around him. The invisible black chains of order, cold and ruthless, but extremely tough, jointly supported the kingdom of Lowen. And he and all other Lowen nobles and ordinary people lived together under these rules of order. The difference is that the nobles can stand in the shadow of order, avoiding the constraints of rules while using the existing order to benefit themselves, while all ordinary people are destined to be the lowest oppressed group unable to move freely. The stricter the law and the more stable the situation, the more difficult it is for people at the bottom to turn over, and they can only carry mountains and move forward hard. Asta did not take the potion at this time, but chose tonight's dinner.
At that time, many nobles gathered together, and the atmosphere of order and chaos would be more intense.
This is the most suitable time to take the potion in advance.
Back home, Grellant had been waiting in the lobby on the first floor for a while.
Seeing Asta coming back, Grellant immediately greeted him. "Asta, long time no see." After a few greetings, Grellant said proudly, "Asta, my tamer potion has been completely digested, and I will soon be promoted to sequence 7. It took more than half a year to digest the tamer potion. Grellant, it seems that you really have no talent in taming beasts."
Asta still smiled and said, "That's great. Your growth has exceeded my expectations."
Really, Grellant was in a good mood and kept sharing with Asta how he became a qualified animal trainer in the past 6 months. In addition to training pets at home, he also spent his own money to set up a circus outside and personally served as an animal trainer in it. He also performed with the circus many times and won many flowers and applause. Asta just listened silently and occasionally said a few words about his daily life in South Wales. At the end, Grellant smiled and said, "Asta, do you know what the next sequence of this extraordinary path is? Have you heard of vampires? Vampires? Are they the dirty creatures in the novels that hide in the castle and like to suck the pure blood of human girls?
This resistance is not ordinary." Asta couldn't help but think of the vampire who liked puppets. If he were here, he would definitely argue loudly, "We are noble blood clans, not dirty vampires."
Seeing that Hasta did not speak, Grellant's face changed slightly. "Asta, you don't want to tell me that the sequence 7 of this extraordinary path is a vampire?" Asta nodded. Grellant's face changed for a while, and finally gritted his teeth and said, "Forget it. I'm not in a hurry to be promoted. I will consider promotion when I can overcome the obstacle of blood-sucking."
Asta did not force it. It was enough for Grellant to get here. The next extraordinary road was not suitable for him. It's better to be a viscount who enjoys life. After Grellant left, Earl Richard who lived nearby also came to visit. Asta was very impressed by this Earl Richard with a hole in his brain. I thought he was going to ask about the existence of gods in his mind again this time, but he behaved very normally, and it seemed that he was just interacting with people normally. After staying for about half an hour, he got up and said goodbye. Such a change made Hasta a little worried. There are 2 possibilities here. The first possibility is that Earl Richard has completely gotten rid of the influence and completely recovered. The second possibility is that Earl Richard completely accepts the abnormality in his mind.
But Hasta didn't pay too much attention to him. Anyway, he would leave Backland in a few days. If something really happened, the people from the Church of the Goddess of Night would naturally deal with it. At about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Hasta went to Backland University to meet Professor Wayne and lecturer Fullen. He talked with them until almost 6 o'clock before returning.
At 7:10, he got on the carriage and went to the royal dinner tonight.
The crimson moon tonight happened to be a full moon. The crimson moon, like a big disk, shed light, reflecting the lively and bright lights of the dinner. The same crimson moon may turn into a deadly full moon in the eyes of different people. In the North District, in a room on the second floor of a hotel, a suppressed and fierce banging sound was coming out. Furs, what's wrong with you? Hugh looked anxiously and uneasy at Furs, whose eyes were red, hair was loose, and his 10 fingers on his hands kept scratching the wooden door, and sometimes clenched into fists and beat. The things in the room were in a mess. If Zio hadn't closed the door immediately, Furs would have gone crazy and ran out. Shoo! Go away. It's the full moon whisper. It's a curse. Furs gritted her teeth and uttered these words completely. Blood flowed from the corners of her mouth, staining her light blue pajamas red. Ah! With another painful wail, Furs squatted on the ground and scratched her hair with both hands. Strands of hair were pulled off with a little blood. The scene in front of her made Zio's eyelids twitch wildly. If this continued, even if Furs survived the full moon whisper curse tonight, she would definitely become a bald man without hair tomorrow. She had always known that Furs would encounter the full moon whisper curse during the full moon, but since Furs believed in the stars, she had never had similar symptoms. But tonight, Furs's full moon whisper curse appeared again. And this symptom was more fierce than any previous time. Zio didn't dare to waste any more time, and hurriedly knelt on the ground, praying devoutly to the stars, hoping that the stars' gift could save Furs again. About 5 minutes later, the familiar starry sky descended on this small room again. The starlight was brilliant, and Furs, who was originally suppressing her madness, finally returned to her usual quiet appearance. Furs, are you okay? Zio took 2 steps forward, wanting to check Furs's current condition. But when she was about to approach Furs suddenly stood up, raised her head, and revealed her blood-stained face. But she spoke in a completely different tone from her usual tone. Stars, is this meeting unexpected? In the depths of the hazy starry sky, above the Hall of Stars, Hester looked down at Furs below with a solemn expression. A twisted and overlapping portal was tightly attached to Furs. Furs was polluted. Chapter 337 The Incarnation of the Sun, the Purifier among the Stars. So this is what the fallen Mother Goddess planned. No wonder he always felt something was wrong during the battle last night. Because it was too late last night, he did not go to the Hall of Stars to observe Furs's condition after returning home. Tonight is a full moon. Through Mr. Men's call and the means left on Furs last night, the fallen Mother Goddess was able to penetrate her power and successfully pollute Furs. Although this kind of pollution is far less than that of Mr. Men, it is enough for Furs to suffer. In the Hall of Stars, Hester calmly watched all this. Fallen Mother Goddess, you have gone to great lengths just to make me look up to you? Who doesn't know how to mock? Stars, I have seen through your true and false, and now your condition is far worse than mine. Furs's eyes turned from black and white to completely fallen darkness, like 2 black abysses hanging high, and at the end of the abyss, the fallen Mother Goddess's eyes were scanning the light of the stars. The fallen and evil eyes are a predator lurking in the depths of darkness. The reason why you dare not pull me into the Hall of Stars is because you are afraid of my status. Your inexplicable hostility also stems from your lack of confidence. The light of the stars will eventually fall into the abyss. The fallen Mother Goddess borrowed Furs' body and spoke to herself, full of confidence and ridicule in the gloom. As he spoke, gusts of cold wind blew in the room for no reason. Seeing this, Shu hurriedly found a remote corner to hide, looking at Furs, who was obviously different, with a worried look on her face. She couldn't hear the conversation between the stars and the fallen Mother Goddess, but she vaguely guessed what was happening now. The stars are fighting against the evil existence parasitic in Furs' body. Hester said calmly, "Can your abyss bear the light of the scorching sun?" As this voice sounded, a golden beam of light that was pure to the point of being substantial suddenly descended, completely covering Furs' body. The overlapping portals behind her were shaken and purified, turning into wisps of black smoke that dissipated in the light of the scorching sun. Furs' body began to tremble violently, and he collapsed on the ground, his eyes gradually returning to their original black and white. "Stars, is this your authority?" Furs raised his head stubbornly, looking up at the starry sky above his head and the blazing sunlight that was like a waterfall, with a hint of sarcasm on his lips. "No, this is the authority of the eternal blazing sun," Hester silently added in his heart.
To be more precise, this is the ability of the Sun Priest of Sequence 7 of the Sun Path, summoning holy light. When he was promoted to Sequence 6 Corrupted Baron, he had already thought about getting close to the authority of the eternal blazing sun, but he had never used this ability.
His description sentence is, "The brilliant golden light is the hope of new life, the light that dispels the night, and the opposite of all darkness and corruption. He is the carrier of light, he is the incarnation of the sun walking in the world, he is the purifier among the stars." The last chain of order turned into a curled-up sun and merged into the position between his eyebrows. Today was the first time it was used, and the result was excellent. The power of the eternal sun was very compatible with his nature, as if it was supposed to be this way. Through the summoning holy light cast by the Hall of Stars, it was as if the eternal sun had come in person, directly purifying the pollution in Fir's body in one breath. The pollution of the fallen mother goddess did not even have the strength to struggle, and was completely purified. Warmth, the long-lost warmth began to flow from every inch of the skin of the body, removing the coldness and stiffness of the whole body, and the whole person seemed to be immersed in a hot spring with just the right temperature. This feeling is a bit like returning to the amniotic fluid of the mother's body at the beginning of birth. Fir's pores were dilated all over her body, and she greedily bathed in the scorching sunlight. Although there were a lot of bloodstains on her face and clothes, in the golden scorching sunlight, the whole person was as pure as a ball of glass that was constantly calcined. The dirt in the body seemed to be constantly discharged with the breathing of the pores.
Hugh, who had been hiding far away for fear of being affected, looked at Furs in front of him at this moment, and his breathing stagnated, and he felt a little strange. Kneeling on the ground, with eyes closed and palms facing upward, Furs looked like the recipients blessed by the gods in the church murals. If a pair of wings of light grew behind her, she would be an angel. A pure white angel. When the golden sunlight dissipated, the starry sky on the ceiling also dissipated. Furs was still immersed in the endless warmth until Shu patted her cheek several times, and she slowly opened her eyes. "Shu, I feel more energetic than ever before," Furs murmured, and then her eyes turned red and wet. She turned over and knelt on the ground to pray devoutly to the stars, thanking them for their protection this time. When she was polluted, she just lost control of her body, but she still had some perception of what was happening outside.
Knowing that it was the stars who purified her, she regained her body from the terrible evil god and regained her sanity. If it weren't for the stars' protection, even if her body was not occupied tonight, she would never have been able to survive this full moon mumbling. That was the most helpless night she could remember. It was the stars that lit up her hope for life. Thank you for the stars' blessing. Zio also prayed to the stars devoutly. After a long while, Furs and Zio hugged each other and cried. "Hey, Furs, has your skin improved? Has it? Absolutely?" Shu stroked Furs's cheek again. Could Furs have skin as smooth and delicate as that of a 16-year-old girl? "It seems to have changed a little," Furs was a little unsure. "It's not just a little change, it's too big. Even the dark circles under your eyes from staying up late to write for many years have completely disappeared." Shu took the opportunity to pinch Furs's cheek again and patted it several times. The bouncy touch made people love it. Among the people she knew, only Miss Audrey had such smooth and delicate skin. But how could Furs compare with Miss Audrey? Furs held her cheeks with both hands and rubbed them a few times. It really felt different from before. "Go to the bathroom and wash it, and then look in the mirror," Shu urged, pushing Furs, who was still confused, into the bathroom. She actually hoped that she would be the one who was contaminated and parasitized tonight. Maybe with the blessing of the stars, she could still grow taller. In the Hall of Stars, Hasta carefully checked the physical condition of Furs and Zio again, and only retracted his gaze after confirming that there was nothing abnormal. The sun, the purifier among the stars. Its ability to purify pollution is indeed outstanding, and it is unknown whether it can also work on Mr. Men. Unfortunately, the star where the fallen mother goddess is located has been completely covered by darkness, and it is impossible to detect the specific condition of Mr. Men. But this does not mean that he has no test subjects, and Russell is also a good experimental subject. Hasta's eyes fell on the star of the fallen mother goddess, but he did not take revenge immediately. He had other things to do tonight. Wait until he is promoted to a Sequence 5 Chaos Mentor, and then try again. He will only make simple attempts. As for wanting to purify Mr. Men and Rissel directly from the hands of the fallen Mother Goddess, even with the help of the Hall of Stars, he will have to wait until the sequence 2 angels have a little chance. Royal Manor. When Hester came out of the bathroom, the ball was over. When Greg saw him appear, he left a young lady who was chatting, walked up to him, and asked him if he was feeling unwell.
Asta could only use the excuse that he was used to the rough food in South Wiltshire, and after returning, he ate too much of Backlund's exquisite food, which caused stomach discomfort.
Greg didn't think much about it, but just told him to take care of his body. As the ball ended, the eldest Prince Govington, who was in charge of hosting the dinner, walked up to the podium and began a decent and tedious speech. Halfway through his speech, he looked at Asta and introduced enthusiastically, "Let me introduce you to a young and promising noble, Earl Hasta Campbell. He went to South Wiltshire at a young age to handle coastal defense affairs. During his tenure, he cooperated with the Storm Church many times to clear out pirate groups that plundered everywhere. He also hanged those damn pirates on the gallows one by one, sweeping away the sluggish atmosphere of the Navy during this period." Asta walked up to the podium amid applause. On such an occasion, he didn't need to say anything touching, just praise the king and the kingdom of Lowen. When he was speaking on the podium, he keenly noticed that someone was observing him. He scanned the dignitaries present calmly, and finally landed on an old man standing by the railing on the second floor. Asta recognized this man. Drink Augustus, the former Grand Duke of Southwell, did not expect him to come to the banquet tonight. Did he come specifically for him? In the seemingly casual look, there was deep hostility. Asta's eyes just swept past without deliberately stopping. After finishing his speech, Asta came to the edge of the garden alone. On one side, the nobles were talking elegantly under the brilliant lights, and on the other side, temporary couples were rubbing their ears in the secluded bushes. At the junction of order and chaos, Asta took out the Chaos Mentor potion that had been prepared long ago from his jacket pocket and swallowed it all in one breath. Chapter 338 Chaotic Night. After the viscous and slippery liquid entered the body along the mouth, it gradually became overwhelming. The internal organs also began to become disordered and torn, and the skin under the fine fabric began to develop fleshy bumps, which were itchy and numb, and tentacles seemed to grow out of them. The originally clear sense of reason gradually began to fall into chaos, and all kinds of messy thoughts were flying around in his mind. But no matter what changes occurred in his body, Hester still stood upright with an expressionless face, while trying his best to suppress the various changes in his body. On one side was the cold rules and order, on the other was the lively and extreme chaos. Reason and chaos were constantly colliding and tearing apart, as if they were about to tear his body in half. In such a torn and entangled situation, he seemed to see black chains of rules extending vertically to the sky from every place in Backlund, eventually converging into a regular mountain that was steadily pressing on everyone's heads. The hard and cold chain of rules is difficult to shake, but there is a lingering shadow surrounding each chain of rules. Especially right below the regular mountain, the light of the crimson moon at the top is reflected, forming a shadow of order on the earth. No matter how strict the rules are and how consistent they are, wherever rules are born, there will inevitably be a shadow of order. As the vision deepened, he saw an individual under the chain of rules. Perhaps he could no longer call them human beings. Those are twisted lines, and they are being alienated, or should be said to be domesticated, by the so-called rules. Obeying the law is itself a process of domestication. Just like the turkeys on the farm, the farmer only provides a delicious meal at 12 noon and 5 o'clock in the evening every day. At first, the turkeys thought about foraging on their own, but as they got used to having 2 meals of feed a day, every time it was time to eat, they would run from various places to the feeding point. Those turkeys that stubbornly insist on themselves can only starve or be beaten. After this behavior continues a few times, when it comes time to feed food, they will obediently follow other turkeys to the feeding point and start to grab at food. If there is a scientist in the turkey who is good at summarizing, he can summarize a set of rules applicable to the turkey group based on daily life experience. This is another story. When chaos and reason were slightly balanced, Hester braced himself, left the dinner, got on the carriage and left. The carriage slowly moved forward along the street. Hester opened the windows on both sides. The cool breeze blew on his face, which slightly weakened the chaos in his mind, and his reason temporarily prevailed. In the mysterious world, chaos is the permanent resident, and reason is only a temporary visitor.
So after taking the magic potion and being promoted, he must hurry up and return to South Wales.
In that country where he has only one voice, his chaos will not be noticed by others. If he continues to stay in Backland, his abnormal behavior that occasionally falls into chaos will definitely be noticed by others, especially the Lowen royal family. So before taking the Chaos Mentor potion tonight, he had already made some preparations.
He had already asked someone to buy a ticket to leave Backland tomorrow afternoon. He only needed to maintain his sanity for half a day, and he didn't have much to worry about.
As for King George III, he has already taken care of it and does not need to report anything more when he leaves. He also took the time to visit Grey Linte, Greco, Professor Wayne and others, leaving only Miss Audrey who he had yet to see. I can just visit her tomorrow morning and meet Susie to see how she is doing during this period of study. As for the matter of dealing with the Abraham family and the followers of the stars, leave it to Bernadette. She alone is worthy of the entire Abraham family today. While Hasta was thinking, his reason was swallowed up by chaos again, and his eyes were blurred, at a loss and at a loss. After returning home, Butler Neil asked the maid to bring the sweet sobering soup. Hasta took a sip and frowned slightly. Sweet? Is this what sobering soup should taste like?
Don't you like sweet food? You even asked the chef to develop this sobering sweet soup.
I like the spicy hangover soup, I will remember it next time. The maid looked at Hasta's back upstairs in confusion. Spicy hangover soup? Do you want to add chili pepper segments to the hangover soup? But wouldn't it taste weird? Perhaps his lordship's eating habits have changed due to his life in South Wales. She didn't understand but was shocked, and turned to the kitchen to convey the latest instructions from the Earl to the chefs. In the bathroom, Hasta habitually took a bath before going to bed, but he brushed his teeth. After brushing his teeth, he shouted toward the door. Send some breakfast. Breakfast? Shouldn't it be time for late-night snacks? The two maids guarding the door looked at each other and interpreted this sentence as using breakfast food as a midnight snack. After finishing a breakfast in the bathroom, Hasta remembered to take a bath. After taking a bath and going back to the room to rest, Hasta could not fall asleep while lying on the warm quilt.
There were all kinds of voices in his mind all the time, some urging him to sleep, some calling him to get up and get high, some wanting him to go out and commit thief at night, and another telling him to sneak to Earl Hall. Home knocks on Miss Audrey's window.
How could he do such a disrespectful and embarrassing behavior? Earl Hall's house. Audrey did not attend the royal dinner tonight because she had turned down the dinner a few days ago. She could only listen to her eldest brother briefly describe what happened at the dinner tonight. It was already past 10 o'clock in the evening when she returned to her room after taking a bath. She stretched and lay on her side on the bed, telling Susie not to stay up late to read. Audrey, don't you think it's best to quietly communicate with books when it's late at night? I don't think so. Night is the time to sleep, and day is the time to work hard. This is why a day is divided into night and day. Well, this is the will of the Creator.
Audrey firmly opposed Susie's behavior of secretly rolling inward at night.
Oh, Susie couldn't argue with Audrey, so she could only close the book and lie down in her doghouse with her eyes closed to rest. Audrey turned off the lights in the room with satisfaction, and fell asleep with a soft pillow.
After an unknown period of time, there was a rhythmic knocking sound from the window.
Dong, dong, dong dong. Susie, who was not very sleepy, woke up immediately. She crawled out of the doghouse, her tail erect, her eyes wide open, and stared at the window as if facing a great enemy. In addition to the sound of knocking on the window, a black figure could be vaguely seen hanging outside the window. Like a giant humanoid bat, Susie hurried to Audrey's bed and barked loudly twice, which immediately made Audrey open her sleepy eyes and wake up. Susie, is it dawn? Audrey rubbed her eyes a little confused. Audrey, something is knocking on the window. Susie was afraid of disturbing the unknown creatures outside, so she tried to lower her voice. Susie said it several times, and Audrey woke up suddenly, her eyes subconsciously looking at the window.
There was indeed a black figure like a human, and that figure was still knocking on the window rhythmically. The Batman in the folk horror novel. This was the first thought that came to Audrey's mind. In a horror novel she had read, there was a record of a Batman who was similar to humans and liked to haunt at night. Along with the Batman, there were also Mothman, Owlman, and so on.
Audrey was a little scared at first, but she thought that she was already a Sequence 7 psychologist, and even if she really encountered some unknown creatures, she would have a certain ability to protect herself. Besides, there was Susie next to her, and this was still her home. Audrey regained her composure and looked at the unknown figure who was still knocking on the window, but a strong curiosity arose instead. She got up from the bed carefully, put on a pink and white coat, and gestured with her hands, beckoning Susie to approach the window with her. Closer to the window, the light of the stars in the sky fell, allowing Audrey and Susie in the room to see the outline of the unknown creature outside the window more clearly. It seemed like a human figure. How could someone come to knock on her window in the middle of the night? It must be her own illusion. Audrey shook her head and suppressed this absurd idea. When Audrey and Susie were about to approach the window, the figure outside the window suddenly fell from the window as if frightened. Audrey hurried to the windowsill, pushed the window open, and looked under the window. She could only vaguely see a figure that quickly merged into the night and disappeared. She blinked and asked curiously, "Susie, do you recognize what this unidentified creature is?" Susie came to Audrey, stretched out her front paws and rested on the edge of the windowsill, tried to stand up straight, looked out the window, and said uncertainly, "Audrey, I seem to smell a familiar smell." "Familiar smell? I can't be sure, maybe it's really a Batman." "What a wonderful night." Audrey sighed, and murmured, "It happens that I will visit Mr. Asta tomorrow morning, and ask him by the way if there are really such creatures as Batmen in this world." "Audrey, I also want to visit Mr. Asta." Audrey thought for a moment and frowned slightly, saying, "Then you are not allowed to let Mr. Asta send you some messy books." Susie was silent for a while and said, "Audrey, I just want to learn knowledge." Audrey said earnestly, "Susie, knowledge is poisonous." "Audrey, but the book says that knowledge is beneficial. Books are compiled by people, and it is inevitable that there will be mistakes." Audrey sighed again and said, "You must learn to have your own thinking ability, and you can't just learn knowledge from books." "Audrey, I understand." Susie's eyes lit up, as if she had figured out an important juncture. Audrey had a bad premonition, but she didn't have the mind to explore these things now. She still had to sleep. Chapter 339 Mr. Asta turns against Russell. I actually went to knock on Audrey's window in the middle of the night. I knocked for quite a long time, startling Audrey and Susie. In the morning, Asta had just woken up and recalled the absurd things that happened last night. He couldn't help but lower his head and cover his face. Fortunately, when Audrey opened the window, he regained his sanity and slipped away quickly, without letting Audrey see who was idle in the middle of the night and knocked on her window. If Audrey really saw his face, he would definitely die on the spot. "Forget it, I won't visit Audrey today, just in case Susie recognizes me." Susie. Asta thought of the key point, got up in a hurry, went to the bathroom to take a bath, and added a lot of extra fragrance. Susie's dog nose is so powerful, he must take advantage of the time when he is sober to wash off the smell of last night. After soaking for more than half an hour, Asta washed again before coming out of the bathroom. The maids waiting outside the door had curious expressions on their faces, but Hasta ignored them and walked past them. He did not go downstairs to have breakfast immediately, but went to the study first, took out a pen and paper, and listed some precautions on the paper. After what happened last night, Hasta had a general understanding of his current situation. Because he had just taken the potion, he would be in a state of disorder and confusion for a short period of time, and it was easy to make a series of confusing behaviors different from the past. When he fell into a state of confusion, his reason would be blocked, and he would not feel that there was anything wrong. Only when he regained his consciousness would he regret that he had done such a shameful thing. Take the act of knocking on the window last night. At the moment when he regained his reason, Hasta realized that he appeared outside Audrey's window, and then he recalled the cause and effect. It was a bit like hindsight. If he wanted to overcome this situation, he could use the power of the Hall of Stars to suppress it by force when the chaos was about to erode. But he could also choose to let it go. After all, this was only a negative impact in a short period of time, and it would be completely back to normal in about 10 days and a half months. Just like a spring, the more it is squeezed, the more amazing power it will burst out, so it needs to be relaxed occasionally. Asta quickly thought about these things while his mind was still alive. In order to avoid irreparable behavior in the chaos during this period,
Hasta deeply implanted the prohibited matters in the form of psychological suggestion. But after all, he is not an extraordinary person of the audience path, and simple psychological suggestion may not serve as a reminder. Should I ask Audrey for help? Hasta fell into thought. With Audrey's intelligence, she would definitely use this to guess the culprit who knocked on the window last night. Or should I try Susie? It seems a bit unreliable. Hasta stayed in the study for half an hour before going downstairs to enjoy breakfast. He glanced at the time, it was more than 8 o'clock. In order not to do anything too strange, Hasta went upstairs and locked himself in the study.
He was going to spend half a day in the study in the morning. As time went by, the feeling of chaos did not come, which made Hasta feel a little weak in his heart, and he could only pray that no one would visit him in the morning. At about 9:30, Butler Neil knocked on the door of the study.
"Mr. Earl, Miss Audrey is here to visit and is now in the living room downstairs."
"I'll go down now. Please ask someone to prepare some snacks and send them to the study later." After Butler Neil left, Hasta opened the door and came out. He took a few deep breaths before he cheered up and pretended that nothing had happened and went downstairs. Audrey smiled and said, "Mr. Hasta, I'm sorry to bother you." "I welcome Miss Audrey anytime," Hasta said, and glanced at Susie who was following Audrey, and greeted her. Susie responded with a bark. After a few simple words, Hasta invited Audrey to the study on the second floor to chat. Susie also followed up. When she was going up the stairs, Susie suddenly came to Hasta's trouser leg, moved her nose slightly, and sniffed carefully several times. Hasta looked calm, but he was a little panicked in his heart. Could Susie's dog nose really smell that the person who knocked on the window last night was him? Fortunately, Susie didn't notice anything and returned to Audrey. Arrived at the study and closed the door. Sitting on the sofa, Audrey said mysteriously, "Mr. Hasta, I seem to have met a Batman last night." She described what she saw and heard last night in detail with her imagination. "Batman, Miss Audrey, you are very good at making associations. You even guessed that it was a Batman, a fictional creature that lives in horror novels." Hasta maintained a decent smile on his face. "I haven't encountered a Batman yet. Maybe there are traces of their activities in the southern continent." Audrey exclaimed softly, her eyes slightly widened, and she said, "Mr. Hasta, are there really such creatures as Batmen?" Hasta chuckled and said, "The so-called Batman may just be a giant bat with an exaggerated appearance. In the dim light conditions at night, people can easily make mistakes and make excessive associations based on it." Audrey thought seriously for a while, frowned and said, "I also think that figure is not like a Batman, but more like a person." Hasta's heart skipped a beat, and he slightly moved his gaze away from Audrey, and met Susie's faint eyes that seemed to see through everything. If it is really a Batman, it should flap its wings and fly up to the sky when it is frightened. How can it fall to the ground like a human and run into the night again? Audrey analyzed it seriously, and then lowered her voice and asked, "Could someone sneak into my house in the middle of the night to spy on me? Would there be such a boring person?" Hasta was still very calm. Audrey thought seriously for a moment, and felt that there would not be such a boring person. Perhaps the figure last night was just some strange creature living in the depths of the jungle, and it happened to run near her house last night. Putting this matter aside, Audrey asked Hasta about his life experience in South Wales. Hasta breathed a sigh of relief and began to share with Audrey what he saw and heard in South Wales. He deliberately made everything clearer, and after talking about this topic, Miss Audrey should go back. "Is my second brother okay, Sir Alfred? He likes life in South Wiltshire very much, and he said the climate here is much more pleasant than the southern continent." Hester then told Audrey about some of Alfred's career. Audrey listened carefully, with a sweet smile on her face. She was just worried that her second brother was unwilling to return to Backland because he was angry with his eldest brother. If he could find a suitable path for him in South Wiltshire, she would be relieved. After talking about these things, Audrey brought up the Russell diary. Although she has been acquiring Russell diaries recently, the speed of obtaining them is getting slower and slower. Just as Hester was about to answer, confusion suddenly appeared in his mind, which began to erode his clear mind. He was stunned for several seconds, and subconsciously answered Audrey's soft call. Russell is a person with a particularly chaotic private life. The more you know him, the closer your good impression of him will be to disillusionment. Audrey asked curiously,
Is this the latest research result of Mr. Asta?
Before his rise, Russell often mingled in aristocratic banquets, and his private life was extremely decadent. He accepted all kinds of noble ladies and mature ladies. Oh, by the way, he was also appreciated and valued by several male nobles. Audrey blushed slightly and looked at Asta with some reproach. How could he say these things in front of her?
But it sounded quite interesting, and she inexplicably wanted to listen more, well, only a little bit.
Susie, who was lying at Audrey's feet, also listened carefully. In addition to the many things worth criticizing in his private life, he is not very good in other aspects, standing on the shoulders of giants. He plagiarized many works that did not belong to him. Ah! Audrey exclaimed when she heard this, and even Susie followed suit. What new discoveries did Mr. Asta make in South Wales? This clearly shows that he has turned from a fan to a hater of Emperor Russell. Audrey asked in a low voice, "Mr. Asta, are you okay?" Asta smiled at Audrey. "I'm fine." As he said that, he walked out from behind the desk, sat on the sofa side by side with Audrey, lowered his head, and reached out to touch Susie's head. "Susie, I will give you a few books by Hermes next time. He is a master of mysticism in the field of mind, and he has also studied the dragon of mind. His works can help you better understand and learn psychology." Woof! Susie immediately became energetic. She is very interested in psychology. Audrey, who was sitting next to Asta, was hesitant to speak, her cheeks flushed slightly, and she also wanted to see the works left by the master of mysticism, Hermes. That was the great man who created the ancient Hermes language. It can be said that he is the guiding light of mankind in the field of mysticism. But she was embarrassed to admit that she was at the same level as Susie. "If there is a chance in the future, let Hermes give you a private lesson." Hasta casually threw out another piece of heavy news. Woof! Susie was delighted, her tail wagging non-stop.
Audrey was stunned, puzzled. Mr. Hasta, is Master Hermes still alive now? As a master in the field of mysticism, he is naturally a powerful, extraordinary person. How could he die easily? He just changed his identity to live.
Audrey thought about it and felt right. She had a strong expectation in her heart. If such a legendary figure really came to give Susie a private lesson, she would definitely listen in. How could she bypass her owner and teach a dog? It should be more like letting Susie listen in on her own private lesson. Wait, is Mr. Hasta a little different today than usual? Audrey blinked, then narrowed her eyes and began to observe Mr. Hasta carefully today. Chapter 340 Star Organization, Sage except when dancing at the banquet. Audrey had never observed Hasta at such a close distance. From the tone of her conversation, facial expressions to her clothing and perfume taste, she paid close attention to observing Mr. Hasta who was nearby. The most obvious thing is his behavior and conversation. Today, Mr. Asta speaks more relaxedly and casually. In the past, he might have thought about every word he said in his mind first, or even several times, but today, what he said was open and frank, and he spoke frankly without thinking. Audrey tried to ask, "Mr. Hasta, do you think I look good?" Of course, this is an undoubted fact. Whether it is me or others, as soon as they see you, their eyes will naturally focus on you. Asta turned slightly sideways, looked at Audrey seriously and said, "Miss Audrey can doubt many things, but she should never doubt her own beauty, unless you want to question everyone's beauty standards." Audrey's cheeks were slightly red, and she was a little more certain of her guess. In the past, Mr. Hasta would not have said such straightforward words of praise. "Mr. Hasta, do you feel that you are any different today than before? Have it? Maybe I saw it wrong." Audrey did not dwell on this topic, and the hidden smile in her eyes became stronger. "Mr. Hasta, how did you sleep last night? Of course it's good." Asta smiled, got up and left the sofa, returned to sit behind the desk. "I drank some wine last night and slept soundly when I came back. I didn't wake up until early this morning." Suspicion flashed in Audrey's eyes. "I thought Mr. Hasta went out for a walk in the middle of the night." She emphasized the word, midnight, quite strongly. Night is a time for sleeping, a gift from the goddess. Hasta has not forgotten that he is a believer of the goddess of night. Audrey praised the goddess at the same time, and then asked, "Mr. Hasta, when we digest the potion, will the knowledge brewed in the potion affect our normal behavior?" The higher the sequence, the more obvious this influence becomes. Hasta thought for a moment and then added, The essence of the extraordinary path is chaos and madness. The closer to the peak, the closer to madness. Audrey nodded with a serious expression, and after chatting for a while, Audrey stood up and left to leave. Hester sent her downstairs and watched her board the carriage. Before leaving, Audrey deliberately opened the car curtain and showed a bright smile. "Mr. Asta, it is better to visit during the day." Hester was not too surprised. He just smiled without responding and watched Audrey's carriage go away. On the carriage, Audrey was humming a little tune and was in a particularly good mood. Susie looked at her curiously and couldn't help but let out a bark. "Susie, I discovered another little secret of Mr. Hester." "Woof? It was agreed to be a secret, so of course I can't tell you." "Woof, comma." In the afternoon, Hester took the steam train and left Backland. This left Forsey and Zio, who came late to ask Hester for help, to look for Audrey's help instead. The two of them now don't even have a serious hiding place, so they can only live in a hotel temporarily. The consumption is too high, and their savings cannot last long. Hugh, in disguise, arrived near Earl Hall's house and waited for about half an hour before meeting Susie out for a walk. Shu walked by as if nothing had happened, and a penny slipped from her finger inadvertently. When she squatted down to pick up the money, she used the cover of her body to stuff a note into Susie's new bag. After a brief contact, Zio came to a nearby cafe and met Forsey, who was waiting here. 20 minutes passed before Audrey led Susie into the cafe. As soon as she sat down, Susie consciously walked around and patrolled. "Have you encountered any difficulties?" Audrey could tell at a glance that Zio and Forsey were uneasy, as if they wanted to say something but were embarrassed to say it. Forsey nodded and said, "I need Miss Audrey to help me with something." Zio next to them gave a brief account of their encounters during this period, but skipped over the matter of the Star Believers. "A suitable place to live, let me think about it." Audrey thought for a while, then clicked on 3 places on the table. "I bought several houses in the early years. These 3 houses have not been rented out yet. You can choose one to live in." Forsey and Zio finally understood how wonderful it is to have a rich woman friend. The two finally chose a house very close to the Temple of Storms. "As for the key, I'll ask Susie to bring it to you when I get back." "Thank you, Miss Audrey. You're welcome, you have helped me with many things." Zio said with a serious face. "I will definitely work hard to fulfill Miss Audrey's orders from now on." Audrey just smiled, tasted a cup of coffee, and left with Susie. At 7 o'clock in the night, Forsey and Zio simply cleaned the 2 bedrooms in the house. I'm so tired." Forsey slumped down on the sofa in the living room on the first floor and stretched out his hands to rub his sore shoulders and thighs. Shu brought 2 cups of hot tea, handed one to Furs, glanced at her and said, "I've told you to exercise more often. You're already complaining about being tired after just a little work. You have to clean it again tomorrow." "I'm not coming. I'm too tired." Furs shook her head and lay on the sofa, not wanting to move at all. "That won't work. This house has 3 floors. The first floor has a living room, kitchen, storage room, and 3 maid rooms. The second floor has 4 bedrooms, a study, and 2 bathrooms." Shu counted carefully and said, "You can ignore the 3rd floor for now, but we must clean the 1st and 2nd floors, so that it will be more comfortable to live in." Furs closed her eyes and sighed. "Shu, do you think we deserve to live in such a good house?" Shu was silent. "Yes, the money they earn in a year is probably enough to pay the rent for this house. On weekdays, they don't dare to imagine that they can live in such a luxurious house, and it's a 3-story villa." Fortunately, Miss Audrey never mentioned the rent issue from beginning to end. She just let them live anywhere and ask her for help if they needed anything. "Fortunately, we met Miss Audrey." Yes. The two looked at each other with the same feeling. At 10 o'clock in the evening, when Furs and Shu were going upstairs to rest, a tall and slender figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the hall. This scene made the two people's expressions change slightly, and they looked at the mature and elegant woman in front of them with a wary face. "I want to form an organization affiliated with the stars, and you two can help." Bernadette just glanced at Shu and Furs calmly, and the majesty on her body made Furs and Shu's bodies tremble unconsciously. "Are you also a believer of the stars?" Furs remembered that the person who helped rescue Shu at the beginning seemed to speak in this voice. Bernadette said calmly, "Well, the people hiding in the dark of Backland have not been completely found out. You two had better follow me to avoid being caught again." There are not many believers in the stars. As believers of the stars, Furs and Hugh are also the few people she can use in Backland. And protecting the believers of the stars is what she should do to relieve the worries and troubles of the stars.
Hush asked with a little stutter, "Who are you?" "You can call me Bernadette."
Furs' eyes flashed with surprise. This name is really nice, as if it has a noble aura. The temperament of the whole person is very similar to Miss Audrey.
To be precise, it is the temperament of Miss Audrey after she grew up and experienced many things.
Hush, who has been paying attention to various bounties for many years, only felt that the woman in front of him was a little familiar, but he couldn't remember it for a while. Furs gradually regained his composure. "How can we trust you?" Bernadette just raised her hand lightly, and 2 pea vines rose from the ground, bringing Furs and Zio to the clouds in an instant. She looked up at the starry sky and bowed slightly, saying, "Great stars, believer Bernadette here prays for your gaze." After a while, the stars in the sky gathered together to draw a mysterious and majestic star hall. In the star hall, the great stars that watch everything are penetrating the starry sky and casting their gazes. Furs and Zio hurriedly imitated Bernadette's movements and praised the stars. Bernadette said, "Star believers need an organization that can unite. I am willing to form a star organization. On the one hand, it can provide a shelter for all star believers, and on the other hand, it is convenient to complete the instructions of the stars. Establish a mysterious organization? It's a good idea, and there should indeed be a star organization. But the star believers now are only Bernadette, Furs, and Zio. Of course, you can also add yourself in the star container."
As for Madame Lisa, they are the Yellow Monk organization, and Hasta does not want them to get involved. With Bernadette's rich organizational experience, the future is something to look forward to.
In the Hall of Stars, Hasta thought for a while and agreed to Bernadette's request.
"The stars will always protect you." Leaving this sentence, Hasta dispersed the familiar starry sky. "Then you are the Pope," Furs said tentatively. "You can call me the Sage." Bernadette has her own ambitions in creating the stars organization. A sage needs to guide lost people to the right path. It is closer to the image of a navigator, a puzzle solver, and a universal salvation, rather than the Pope who symbolizes majesty and power. Creating a new organization, opening up from scratch, and under the gaze of the stars, is very conducive to her role as digestion. Furs and Zio looked at each other and said in unison, "Meet the Sage." Bernadette nodded slightly, her eyes were a little deep. If Sequence 2 is not enough to save her father, then go one step further. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.